There is a room in Jerusalem, somewhere around the 10th century before Christ, where an old king is sitting alone with a scroll and an ink pot. And what he is about to write down over the next 3 hours of reading will do something that almost no other book in human history has ever managed to do. It will tell you the truth about your life without flattering you, without frightening you, and without leaving you in the dark. The book he is writing is called Ecclesiastes, and the reason we are going to spend the next 3 hours walking through it slowly, patiently, and without hurrying past anything is that this book was written specifically for the person who has begun to suspect that something about the way they are living does not add up. Picture the setting, because the setting matters. This is not a young man writing. This is a man at the far end of a long life, a man who has already built everything he intended to build. The cedar palace is finished. The temple is finished. The great house of God on Mount Moriah, overlaid with gold, filled with the smoke of 10,000 sacrifices, the wonder of the ancient world. The trade fleets have already come back from Ophir and Tarshish, loaded with gold and ivory and apes and peacocks. The Queen of the South has already come from the ends of the earth to test him with hard questions, and has already gone home saying there was no more spirit left in her, because the half had not been told. The vineyards are planted, the orchards and the pools of water are dug. The singers, male and female, have already performed. The wisdom he was given as a young man when God appeared to him at Gibeon and asked him what he wanted, and he asked for an understanding heart. That wisdom has already made him the most famous mind in the known world. And here he sits, old, quiet, surrounded by the completed evidence of a spectacularly successful life. And he takes up a pen and writes, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." That is where Ecclesiastes begins, not in defeat and not in despair, though it has often been mistaken for both. It begins in something rarer and far more valuable than either of those things. It begins in clarity. It begins with a man who has finally seen through every illusion that human beings build their lives on, and who has decided near the end to sit down and write out for you what he found on the other side of all of it, so that you would not have to spend 40 years and a national treasury discovering it for yourself. That is the promise of the next 3 hours, and I want to name it plainly right at the start, so you know exactly what you are here for. Ecclesiastes will bring clarity to your life. Not comfort first, clarity first. It will take the tangled, exhausting, overloaded interior of a modern human being, and it will begin patiently to sort it. It will tell you which of the things you are chasing can actually be caught. It will tell you which of the things you are afraid of are worth being afraid of. It will tell you what you can control and what you cannot. What will last and what will not, what to hold tightly and what to hold loosely, and what to do on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when the meaning of your whole life feels unclear, and you still have to make dinner and answer emails and go on living anyway. And it will do all of that without lying to you once. That is the extraordinary thing about this book, and it is the reason it has survived. Ecclesiastes does not tell you that everything happens for a reason you will be able to see. It does not tell you that if you work hard enough, your work will endure. It does not tell you that the righteous always prosper and the wicked always fall, because the man writing it had lived long enough to watch the opposite happen with his own eyes, and he refused to write down something he knew was not true. Ecclesiastes is the book in the Bible that looks directly at everything that does not make sense, the injustice, the randomness, the forgetting, the dying, and refuses to look away, and refuses to explain it away, and then, having refused, still arrives at the end of itself with a conclusion that can hold the weight of an entire human life. There is no other book like it. And if you have ever felt that the version of faith you were handed was too thin to survive contact with your actual experience, too tidy, too cheerful, too unwilling to acknowledge what you have actually lived through, then Ecclesiastes may be the book you have been needing for years without knowing its name, so settle in. Wherever you are right now, the kitchen with the lights low, the car in a parking lot before you go inside, the bed at 1 in the morning when sleep will not come, the long shift where this is playing in one ear, you are welcome here. You do not have to arrive at this book with your life sorted. Nobody who has ever gotten anything out of Ecclesiastes has arrived at it with their life sorted. You can come tired. You can come confused. You can come carrying disappointment you have never spoken out loud to a single human being. This book was written by a man who was carrying all of that too, and it has room for you exactly as you are. Before we open the first verse, I want to ask you for one thing, and only one thing. If you have not already subscribed to this channel, would you take a moment right now and do that? That is the whole ask. Nothing else. It is completely free. It costs you nothing at all, not a cent, not a commitment, just a single tap. Tap the subscribe button just below this video, and that is it. You are done. I ask because of what happens otherwise. These teachings go out every week quietly into a very loud internet, and the ones that reach you are the ones that reach you because you are subscribed. If you are not, the next teaching will still be made, and you simply will not be there for it. It will pass by. Subscribing is how you keep a seat in a room you can come back to week after week when the world has worn you down and you need somewhere unhurried to sit with the Word of God for a while. That is all it is, a steady place to return to. And while you are there, do one small thing in the comments for me. Leave a single word, just one, naming what you are carrying into this teaching today. Not an explanation, not a story. One word for the weight you are hoping to set down over these 3 hours. Grief, money, waiting, regret, exhaustion, doubt, whatever the honest word is. You will be surprised what it does to see your own word sitting there beside 1,000 others, and you will be even more surprised at how many people turn out to be carrying the same one you are. Now, let us open the book. The foundation. Who wrote Ecclesiastes, and what kind of book is this? Before we go to the first teaching, we need to spend a little time understanding what we are holding, because Ecclesiastes is genuinely unlike anything else in Scripture, and people get lost in it for lack of a map. 10 minutes spent here will make the next 3 hours enormously more valuable to you. The book opens with these words, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. That single line tells us most of what we need. The Hebrew word translated preacher is koheleth. It's one of the most interesting titles in all of Scripture, and it does not really mean preacher in the sense we use the word today. It does not mean someone delivering a sermon from a pulpit. Koheleth comes from the Hebrew root kahal, which means an assembly, a gathering, a congregation. Koheleth is the one who gathers. He is the convener. He is the man who calls people together and then addresses the gathering he has called. When the Greek translators of the Old Testament rendered it into their language, they used the word Ecclesiastes, from ecclesia, the assembly, and that is where the English title of the book comes from. So the very name of the author tells you the posture of the book. This is a man calling an assembly. He is not lecturing from a distance. He is gathering people around and saying, "Come here, sit down. I have something to tell you, and it concerns all of us." That is exactly the posture in which you should receive it over these next 3 hours. You have been called into an assembly. You are one of the gathered, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. The traditional understanding, held for millennia by both Jewish and Christian readers, is that this is Solomon, the son of David, who reigned in Jerusalem, the wisest man of the ancient world, writing near the end of his life. Everything in the book fits that portrait. The unmatched wisdom, the vast building projects, the wealth, the vineyards, the servants, the singers, the accumulated women, the sense of a man who has tried every avenue a human being can try because he was one of the very few human beings in history with the resources to try all of them. And that is what gives this book its terrible authority. Most of us go through life comforting ourselves with an unspoken hypothesis. If I had more money then, if I had more recognition then, if I had more pleasure, more security, more accomplishment, more freedom, then the restlessness would finally stop. We keep the hypothesis alive precisely because we never get to test it. Solomon tested it. He ran the experiment at a scale no one else has ever been able to run it, with unlimited funds and unlimited access and a mind sharper than anyone else's in the room, and then he wrote down the results. Ecclesiastes is the lab report, and the value of a lab report is that you do not have to repeat the experiment. Now the map. There are two phrases in this book that function like keys, and if you understand them, you will never be lost in Ecclesiastes again. The first is the word translated vanity. In Hebrew, it is hevel, sometimes transliterated hevel. It is used 38 times in this short book, more than in all the rest of the Old Testament combined. And it does not mean vanity in the modern sense of conceit or pride. The literal meaning of hevel is vapor, breath, mist. It is the little cloud you can see in front of your face on a cold morning, there for a second and then gone. It is the wisp of smoke that rises from a candle just snuffed out. It is the same word used for the name Abel, the son of Adam, whose life was over almost as soon as it began. Hevel is not a moral judgment. It is a physical description. When Koheleth says, vanity of vanities, all is vanity, he is not saying that life is worthless. He is saying that life is vapor, insubstantial, impossible to grip. You reach for it, and your hand closes on nothing, not because there was nothing there, but because the thing you were reaching for was never the kind of thing a hand can hold. Everything about your life, your years, your work, your pleasures, your reputation, your body, is real, and it is also mist. It is here, and you cannot keep it. Hold that in your mind, because it changes everything. Half of the despair people feel when reading Ecclesiastes comes from mistranslating hevel into meaningless and concluding that the Bible has a nihilistic book in the middle of it. It does not. It has a book that tells you the truth about the physics of your existence, that you are living inside a vapor, and that the sooner you stop demanding that vapor behave like granite, the sooner you will be free. The second key phrase is under the sun. It appears 29 times. Under the sun means within this observable world, judged by what the eye can see, measured on the horizontal plane alone, without reference to what lies above the sun. It is Koheleth's phrase for the closed system. When he says a thing is vanity under the sun, he is telling you exactly the frame he is speaking in. He is saying, if this life is all there is, if you evaluate everything strictly by what happens between the cradle and the grave, with no God above and no eternity ahead, then here is what the honest accounting looks like. And it is bleak. It is supposed to be bleak. That is the argument. Because scattered all through this book, breaking through the bleakness like light through gaps in a wall, are the moments when Koheleth looks up above the sun. There is the phrase, from the hand of God. There is, God hath made everything beautiful in his time. There is, he hath set the world in their heart. There is, fear God and keep his commandments. Every single time the sun-level accounting reaches its dead end, the book lifts its eyes, and something entirely different comes into view. That is the structure of Ecclesiastes. It is not a depressed man rambling. It is a deliberate, rigorous, brilliantly constructed argument that walks you all the way to the end of every road you might be tempted to take, shows you the wall at the end of each one, and then, only then, once you have genuinely seen that every horizontal road ends in a wall, turns your face upward. And here is the pastoral reason that matters so much to your actual life. Most of the exhaustion you are carrying right now comes from asking things under the sun to give you what only something above the sun can give. You are asking a career to justify your existence. You are asking a relationship to make you feel permanently safe. You are asking money to remove your fear of the future. You are asking your children's success to prove that your life was worthwhile. You are asking your own goodness to make you certain that you are acceptable. And every one of those things is vapor, not evil, not worthless. Vapor, real, good, God-given, and utterly unable to bear the weight you are putting on it. The clarity Ecclesiastes brings is not the clarity of finally getting the answers. It is the clarity of finally asking the right things of the right sources. It is the relief of taking a burden off a shelf that was never built to hold it. One more thing before we begin, about tone. You will notice as we go that Koheleth is often blunt in a way that feels almost unreligious. He will say things that make you blink. He will say that men and animals die the same way. He will say that the day of your death is better than the day of your birth. He will say that he saw the righteous perishing in their righteousness and the wicked living long in their wickedness. He will say, do not be overly righteous. Do not flinch. This bluntness is a mercy. There is a kind of religious talk that is so careful to protect God's reputation that it ends up leaving the honest person entirely alone with their doubts, unable to say out loud the things they actually see. Ecclesiastes gives you permission to say them. It puts them in the canon of Scripture. It makes your hardest observation about the unfairness of life into a verse. And in doing so, it says, God is not afraid of what you have noticed. Bring it here. You do not have to lie to be faithful. 33 teachings lie ahead of us. We will walk from the first verse of chapter 1 to the last verse of chapter 12. We will look at the Hebrew, where the Hebrew opens something up. We will follow the argument as it builds, and we will not skip the hard parts. Take your time. If you need to stop and come back tomorrow, stop and come back tomorrow. This book took a lifetime to write. There is no rush in receiving it. Let us begin. Teaching 1. Vanity of vanities. Ecclesiastes 1:2, the word that unlocks the whole book. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities. All is vanity. This is the thesis. Everything else in 12 chapters is the demonstration of this sentence, and the sentence itself is constructed with enormous care. Notice first the grammatical form, vanity of vanities. In Hebrew, this construction is the superlative. It is the way that language expresses the absolute maximum of something. The Song of Songs means the greatest of all songs. The Holy of Holies means the most sacred of all places. King of Kings means the highest of all kings. So vanity of vanities means the vapor of vapors, the most breath-like of all breath-like things, the supreme instance of insubstantiality. He is not muttering. He is making a formal declaration in the strongest terms his language allows, and then, having stated it, he repeats it. Vanity of vanities. He says it twice in a single verse, which in Hebrew rhetoric is the way of establishing that a matter is settled and certain. And then he closes the loop with the widest possible application. All is vanity, not some, not the bad parts, not the sinful pursuits and the corrupted ambitions, while the good things stand exempt. All, the whole field. Your work and your rest, your grief and your joy, your failures and, this is the hard part, your achievements. Now let us sit with what hevel actually means, because your understanding of this one word will determine whether the next 3 hours land as despair or as liberation. Hevel is vapor, breath on a cold morning, the steam off a cup of coffee that you can see clearly and cannot catch, smoke curling up off a wick. It is a word about substance, or rather about the lack of it. And it carries, in its usage across the Hebrew Scriptures, three overlapping ideas that we should name separately. The first is transience. Vapor does not last. It is here and then it is not, and the interval is short. Your life is like that. Not metaphorically, actually. James, writing 1,000 years later and using the exact same image, said, "Your life is a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away." The years that feel so long while you're inside them are, when viewed from any distance at all, remarkably brief. Ask anyone in their 80s how long it took. They will all tell you the same thing, and it is never what you expect. The second idea is insubstantiality, the impossibility of grasping. You cannot hold vapor. You can move your hand right through it. And this is the specific frustration that Ecclesiastes keeps returning to, the sensation of reaching for something real and finding that your fingers close on nothing. You get the promotion, and within 3 weeks it feels normal, and the restlessness returns. You buy the house, and after a season it is simply the house. You reach the goal, and the goal, once reached, has somehow stopped being the thing you thought it was while you were reaching for it. That is not a personal defect in you. That is hevel. That is what the thing was made of all along. The third idea is enigma, the quality of being impossible to fully make sense of. Vapor has no fixed shape. It shifts as you look at it. Many scholars believe this is closest to Koheleth's primary meaning. Life is not meaningless. Life is baffling. It refuses to resolve into a pattern you can master. Just when you have decided how the world works, the world does something that violates your rule, and you are back to the beginning. Put those three together, and you have the human condition described with a precision that no philosophy since has improved upon. Life is short. Life cannot be gripped. Life will not fully make sense. And now, the crucial turn. What do you do with that? There are only two options, and Ecclesiastes will spend 12 chapters ruling out the first one. Option 1 is to fight it, to refuse the vapor, to build harder, accumulate faster, control tighter, achieve more, in the desperate hope that if you just apply enough force, you can make something in this life solid enough to stand on. That is what almost everyone does, and it is the source of an enormous percentage of all human exhaustion. It is the reason people cannot sleep. It is the reason people cannot rest even on holiday. It is the reason a man will damage his own family in the process of providing for it. He is trying to make vapor into stone, and it cannot be done, and some part of him knows it cannot be done, and the knowing is precisely what makes him drive harder. Option 2 is to accept the vapor and then to ask a different question. Given that this is what life is made of, where do I put my weight? That question, not the despairing question. The practical question is the question Ecclesiastes exists to answer, and the answer, when it comes at the end of chapter 12, will be one of the most solid sentences in all of Scripture. But you cannot get there without first accepting the diagnosis. That is why the diagnosis comes first, in verse 2, before anything else. So let this land on you before we go on. Whatever it is that you have been white-knuckling, the plan for your life, the outcome you are trying to force, the security you are building, the version of yourself you are trying to make permanent, it is vapor. It was always vapor. Your grip was never the thing keeping it in place, and your grip is not what will lose it either. There is enormous grief in hearing that. There is also, if you can stay with it, the beginning of a rest you have not felt in years. Teaching. 2. What profit hath a man? Ecclesiastes 1:3. The question beneath every restless life. What profit hath a man of all his labor which he taketh under the sun? Having stated his thesis, Koheleth immediately asks the question that the rest of the book will answer, and it is worth noticing that he does not begin with a question about God or about death or about the afterlife. He begins with a question about work. about labor, about what you do all day. That is a remarkably shrewd place to start, because work is where most of us actually live. It is where the hours go. It is where the identity gets built. It is the first thing strangers ask about, and the thing you are most likely to be tired from right now. If a book of ancient wisdom is going to make contact with a modern life, work is the doorway. 2 Hebrew words carry this verse, and both are worth knowing. The first is yithron, translated profit. It is a commercial term. It means the surplus, the gain, what is left over after the accounting is done and the costs are subtracted. If you run a business for a year and you total the revenue and subtract every expense, yithron is the figure at the bottom. The remainder, the thing you actually get to keep. The second is amal, translated labor, and amal is not neutral. It is not the pleasant word for productive activity. Amal carries within it the sense of toil, of trouble, of wearisome effort, sometimes even of misery. It is the sweat word. It is the word for the kind of work that costs you something to do. So read the question again, with the weight restored to it. What is the surplus? What is the remainder? What does a person actually get to keep out of all the wearying and costly toil they undertake in this closed system beneath the sun? That question has been sitting quietly in the chest of nearly every adult who has ever lived, and most of them have never said it out loud. It surfaces at particular moments. It surfaces on Sunday evening when the week ahead announces itself. It surfaces in a hospital waiting room. It surfaces when you are 47 and you realize you have been doing this specific thing for 19 years and you have started to wonder what it was all in service of. It surfaces at the funeral of a man who worked hard his whole life and whose desk was cleared out within a week. Koheleth is not being cynical here. He is being an accountant. He is asking the question that any honest person eventually has to run the numbers on. At the end of it all, what is the net? And the answer he will arrive at under the sun is 0. Nothing carries over. The line at the bottom is empty. Every accumulation of a lifetime is transferred at death to someone who did not earn it and may not value it. Every achievement is eventually superseded. Every name is eventually forgotten. Under the sun, taken as a closed system, there is no yithron. That is his finding, and he will state it repeatedly and without flinching. But, and here is where people misread him badly, that is not the same as saying that work is worthless or that you should stop. Ecclesiastes never once counsels you to quit. It will, in fact, 3 separate times before the book is done, tell you to throw yourself into your work with joy and with all your might. The point is not to abandon labor. The point is to stop demanding from labor a kind of payment that labor was never designed to give. Your work cannot give you yithron. It cannot give you a permanent surplus. It cannot give you a legacy that death does not eventually erase. It cannot give you an identity that will hold when your capacity fails. It cannot justify your existence, and it cannot answer the question of whether your life mattered. But your work can be a good and honest way to spend a day. It can be a gift received from the hand of God rather than a debt you are servicing. It can be done with excellence and enjoyed while you are doing it. It can feed people and build things and serve someone. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, exactly what Ecclesiastes will eventually recommend. The freedom in this teaching is enormous once you see it. If your labor cannot pay you what you have been demanding, then you can stop making the demand. You can stop needing the promotion to mean what it cannot mean. You can stop measuring your worth by the size of the surplus, and what is left when the impossible demand is withdrawn is something much lighter and much more human. Work as a good day's activity, done as unto God, enjoyed as bread is enjoyed, and then set down at evening without the whole weight of your existence riding on it. Ask a wrong question, and you will suffer for the length of your life. What profit? Is the wrong question. And Koheleth is showing you that by asking it out loud and following it to its dead end, so that you can hear the silence at the end of it and go find a better question. Teaching. 3. One generation passeth away. Ecclesiastes 1:4-7. The earth abideth forever. One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh. But the earth abideth forever. The sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to his place where he arose. The wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. Unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. This is one of the great passages of poetry in the Hebrew Bible, and if you read it aloud, you can hear what it is doing. The rhythm is circular. The sentences go out and come back. The sun rises and hastens to the place where it rose. The wind turns south, turns north, whirls about, returns. The rivers run and never fill the sea, and the water goes back to where it started to run again. Everything moves, nothing arrives. And set against all this endless circular motion is one line about human beings, and it is startlingly short. One generation passes away, and another generation comes. Feel the contrast, because it is the whole point. The sun keeps its circuit for millennia. The wind has been turning for ages before you. The rivers have run since before there were eyes to see them. And you come, and you go, and another one comes behind you. The permanence belongs to the system, not to the participant. There is a specific kind of vertigo in this that most people encounter at least once. It often happens outdoors, standing at the edge of an ocean, or looking up at a mountain range, or lying on your back under stars on a clear night, far from a city. Suddenly, the scale of things resolves, and you can feel, physically, how small and how brief you are. Some people find that terrifying, some find it strangely calming. Koheleth records it without telling you which to feel, because he is not manipulating you. He is showing you the truth and letting you have your own reaction to it. But notice what he is doing beneath the poetry. He is dismantling one of the great modern illusions before it was even modern, the illusion of significance through permanence. We badly want to leave a mark. We want to build the thing that outlasts us, write the name that gets remembered, raise the family line that carries our influence forward. And this passage says gently, look at the sun, look at the wind, look at the rivers, these things that are actually old, actually enduring, actually permanent in a way your works will never be. And even they are not going anywhere. Even they just repeat. The sun does not accomplish anything with all its rising. The rivers do not fill the sea. Permanence itself, when you look at it closely, turns out to be a circle rather than a line. So if even permanence does not produce meaning, then meaning was never going to come from durability at all. That is the argument being made underneath the poetry, and it is devastating to a certain kind of ambition. There is also a comfort hidden in these verses that people miss, and I want you to find it. The earth abideth forever. That is a statement of stability, and it is placed deliberately against the passing of generations. The world is not falling apart just because your part in it is temporary. The system holds. The sun will rise tomorrow morning whether or not you slept. The seasons will turn whether or not your plans work out. The rain will fall on fields you will never see, feeding people who will never know your name, and it will go on doing that long after you are gone. Now, you can hear that as a diminishment, or you can hear it as a release, because the flip side of you are not necessary to keep the world running is you are not responsible for keeping the world running. It does not depend on you. It never did. That weight you've been carrying, the sense that if you stopped holding everything together, everything would come apart, is a weight you were never assigned. Someone else holds the world in place. He held it before you got here, and he will hold it after. Jesus said something in this exact key. He said, "Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these." Notice who he named: Solomon. The very man writing these words about the sun and the wind and the rivers. Jesus points at a wildflower that lives for a week and says, "That thing, whose whole existence is vapor, is dressed more beautifully than the richest king in your history." So why are you anxious? This is what Ecclesiastes chapter 1 is preparing you for. You are brief. The world is old. God is eternal. And once those three facts are properly ordered in your mind, an enormous amount of anxiety simply loses its footing, because most anxiety is the strain of a temporary creature trying to hold a permanent position. Let the generations pass. Let the sun keep its circuit. Take your own place in the sequence with something other than dread. You are not the first, you will not be the last. And the one who set the sun on its course has not lost track of the brief, bright vapor of your particular life. Teaching 4. There is no new thing under the sun. Ecclesiastes 1:9-11. The strange relief of not being first. The thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, See, this is new, it hath been already of old time, which was before us. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. Modern people bristle at this verse more than almost any other in the book. We live in a civilization organized around novelty. New model, new release, new season, new year, new you. The entire economy runs on the promise that the next thing will be different from the last thing in a way that matters. And here is an ancient king saying flatly, no, there is nothing new. He is not being ignorant of technology. Obviously, the tools change. Obviously, we have things Solomon did not have. He is not making a claim about inventions. He is making a claim about the human situation. And on that level, he is simply, verifiably, permanently correct. Nothing you are going through has not been gone through. Nothing you are feeling has not been felt. The specific shape of your betrayal has been suffered by someone in a mud brick house 4,000 years ago. The exact contour of your ambition drove someone in a Roman city. The particular flavor of your loneliness has kept a monk awake in a stone cell, a mother awake in a farmhouse, a soldier awake in a trench. The parent who cannot reach their child, the person watching a marriage cool, the one who is competent at their job and quietly certain it is meaningless. These are not modern conditions. There is no new thing under the sun. Now hear both edges of that, because it cuts two ways and you need both. The first edge is deflating, and it is meant to be. If you have organized your hope around the idea that you will do something genuinely unprecedented, that your life will be the exception, the one that finally breaks through, this verse is designed to take that hope away from you. Not to cruelly diminish you, but to relieve you of an impossible assignment. You do not have to be unprecedented. You were never going to be. Almost every human being who has ever felt destined for singular greatness has ended up living an ordinary life, and the ones who could accept that early suffered dramatically less than the ones who fought it into their 60s. The second edge is one of the most underrated comforts in all of Scripture, and I want to press it into you. You are not alone in what you are living, ever, in anything. The loneliest thought a suffering person can have is, nobody has ever felt this. Nobody would understand. This particular combination of circumstances is unique to me, and therefore there is no help for it, because help would require someone to have been here before, and no one has. That thought is a lie, and Ecclesiastes 1:9 is the verse that kills it. Whatever room you are in, someone has been in that room. Whatever you are carrying, hands have carried it. The path you are on, however unmarked it feels, is worn smooth with footprints you cannot see, and that is precisely why wisdom is possible at all. If every situation were genuinely new, no wisdom could ever be transmitted, and every generation would start from nothing. The reason Ecclesiastes can help you 3,000 years later is exactly because there is no new thing under the sun. The old book still works because the human heart has not been redesigned. Then comes verse 11, and it is the sharpest sentence in the passage. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come. You will be forgotten. Say it plainly because the book does. Not just in the sense that history will not record you, in the far more intimate sense that within 3 or 4 generations, the people who share your blood will not know your name, will not know what you were like, will not know the thing you were most proud of, or the thing that broke your heart. Try it in the other direction. Name your 8 great-great-grandparents. What were they afraid of? What did they hope for? You cannot answer, and they were as real and as vivid to themselves as you are to yourself right now. This is where a shallow faith says something soothing and moves on quickly. Ecclesiastes does not. It leaves you standing in it, because there is something on the other side of accepting it that you cannot get to any other way. Here is what is on the other side. If being remembered is not available to you, and it is not, then being remembered cannot be the thing your life is for. Which means the enormous energy you have been putting into securing a legacy can be released and spent somewhere it will actually do good. Which means the standard for a life well lived cannot be the size of the footprint it leaves. And then, quietly, from elsewhere in Scripture comes the answer that Ecclesiastes is clearing space for. The Lord says through Isaiah, "I have graven thee upon the palms of my hands." The psalmist says, "Thou tellest my wanderings. Put thou my tears into thy bottle. Are they not in thy book?" Jesus says, "The very hairs of your head are numbered." Human memory is a vapor, and it will lose you. God's memory is not a vapor, and it will not. You will be forgotten under the sun. You are not forgotten above it. Teaching 5, in much wisdom is much grief. Ecclesiastes 1:12-18, what it costs to understand. I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. That which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. Here Koheleth begins the record of his experiments, and the first one he runs is the one nearest to his own gift. He is the wisest man alive. So he does what a wise man does. He tries to think his way to peace. He gives his heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning everything done under heaven. He conducts, in effect, the most thorough investigation of life ever attempted by a single mind. And he reports back with a phrase that ought to be printed on the wall of every graduate school. In much wisdom is much grief. He that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. Do not soften this. It says what it says. Understanding more does not make you happier. It frequently makes you sadder. The more clearly you see how things actually work, in institutions, in politics, in families, in your own heart, the more you see that is genuinely grievous. Ignorance really is a kind of anesthetic, and knowledge really does remove it. Anyone who has ever gained real expertise knows this. The doctor cannot watch a person walk across a room without seeing a gait abnormality. The therapist cannot sit at a family dinner without reading the dynamics. The person who has finally understood their own childhood cannot unsee what they now see in their parents. There is no way back. Once the eyes are open, they do not close, and much of what they see is sorrowful. And notice the 2 impossibilities he names in verse 15, because they are exact. That which is crooked cannot be made straight. That which is wanting cannot be numbered. The first is about the limits of repair. There are crooked things in this world, crooked systems, crooked relationships, crooked histories, that you cannot straighten, not with more effort, not with better technique, not with more information. Some things are bent in a way that human hands cannot unbend. Every reformer discovers this eventually, usually painfully. Every person who has tried to fix a family member discovers it. The crookedness outlasts your capacity to correct it. The second is about the limits of accounting. That which is wanting, what is missing, absent, lacking, cannot be numbered. You cannot count what is not there. You cannot inventory the losses. There is no way to total up the good that failed to happen, the child that was not born, the years that were taken, the version of your life that never got to exist. It is missing and it is uncountable, and no amount of wisdom will ever produce a ledger that balances. So what is the point of wisdom then? If it grieves you and cannot fix what is bent, why pursue it at all? Two answers, and both matter. The first is that Ecclesiastes will later state plainly that wisdom excels folly as far as light excels darkness. Wisdom is genuinely better. It is better to see clearly and grieve than to stumble happily. The sorrow that comes with knowledge is the price of being awake, and being awake is worth the price. This book will say so directly in the next chapter. The second answer is the deeper one. Notice the crucial phrase in verse 13. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. The word for travail here means a wearying, difficult task. And Koheleth says, God gave it. The exhausting business of trying to understand a world you cannot fully understand is not an accident or a punishment. It is an assignment. God has handed human beings the burden of asking questions that human beings cannot fully answer. Why would he do that? Because a creature that could fully answer them would never look up. The unanswerable question is the doorway. The grief that comes with wisdom is the very thing that eventually drives an honest mind past the edge of its own competence and toward the only place where the crooked is made straight and the missing is restored. Wisdom is not the destination. Wisdom is the road that takes you to the end of yourself, which is exactly where God tends to meet people. If you are someone who thinks too much, who has been told to stop overthinking, who lies awake because your mind will not stop running the world's problems, hear this. Your sorrow is not a malfunction of your faith. It is, in the language of Ecclesiastes, a sore travail that God has given. Bring it to him, rather than trying to think your way out of it. You have already proven you cannot. That proof is not your failure. It is the beginning of your freedom. Teaching. 6. I made me great works. Ecclesiastes 2, 1-11. The most expensive experiment ever run. I said in mine heart, Go to now. I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity. I made me great works. I builded me houses, I planted me vineyards, I made me gardens and orchards, and I planted trees in them of all kind of fruits. I made me pools of water, to water therewith the wood that bringeth forth trees. So I was great, and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. Also my wisdom remained with me, and whatsoever mine eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy. Then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and on the labor that I had labored to do. And behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. Read that passage again, and count the word me. I made me great works, I builded me houses, I planted me vineyards, I made me gardens, I made me pools. The Hebrew is even more insistent than the English. This is a man describing a life curved entirely inward, and the grammar itself is doing the diagnosis. But before we judge him, let us appreciate what actually happened here, because it is unrepeatable. Every one of us runs a quiet, lifelong hypothesis. If I had more, I would be satisfied, and we can never disprove it because we never get to the more. The hypothesis survives forever precisely because it is never tested. It hovers just past the edge of our reach, immune to falsification, whispering that the restlessness is a resource problem. Solomon tested it completely. With the treasury of a nation, the authority of a king, the finest craftsmen and architects of the ancient world, and the sharpest mind of his generation to direct it all. Whatever his eyes desired, he did not withhold from them, not one thing. There is no human being in modern life, not the wealthiest person you can name, who has run this experiment as purely as he did, because even great modern wealth operates under constraints of law and public opinion that a 10th century king simply did not have. He built, he planted, he collected, he entertained himself with singers and instruments, he accumulated silver and gold and the peculiar treasure of kings. He surrounded himself with servants and herds and every form of beauty that money could commission. He denied himself nothing. And here is his conclusion in verse 11, and it is the single most expensively purchased sentence in human literature. I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. Notice the physical posture in that sentence. He looked. He stood in front of the finished thing. Everything is built. The gardens are mature, the pools are full, the houses are complete. This is not the frustration of an unfinished project. This is the emptiness of a completed one. Ask anyone who has actually achieved the thing they spent a decade chasing. They will describe the same strange hollow, the arrival that did not arrive. There is a phrase in verse 11 that deserves its own attention: vexation of spirit. The Hebrew is reot ruach, and it can be rendered chasing after wind, or shepherding the wind, or feeding on wind. Picture it. A man running after the wind, arms out, trying to gather it. He can feel it. It is unmistakably real. And there is no possible configuration of his hands in which he ends up holding any. That is the image Ecclesiastes offers for a life spent accumulating. Not a fool grasping at nothing, a competent man grasping at something genuinely real that simply cannot be held. So what went wrong? He did not do anything obviously wicked in this passage. Gardens are good, music is good, building is good, wine in Scripture is a gift. None of this is condemned in itself. What went wrong is in the grammar. I made me. He turned good things into a project for the construction of his own satisfaction. And the moment a good thing is assigned that job, it begins to fail, because created things cannot generate ultimate meaning. They can only reflect it. A garden is glorious as a gift received. A garden is a disappointment as a foundation for a soul. This is the most practical teaching in the first half of the book, and here is how to apply it. Do not wait until you have what you are chasing to find out whether it will satisfy you. You do not have time for that experiment, and you cannot afford it. The report has already been filed by the only man who ever ran it at full scale. Read the results and adjust now, in your 30s, in your 50s, tonight, rather than arriving at 70 in front of your finished houses and discovering the same hollow he found. You are not being told to want nothing. You are being told to stop asking a garden to be God. Teaching 7. Wisdom excelleth folly. Ecclesiastes 2:12-23. The limits of being right and what you cannot keep. Then I saw that wisdom excelleth folly, as far as light excelleth darkness. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. And I myself perceived also that one event happeneth to them all. Then said I in my heart, as it happeneth to the fool, so it happeneth even to me, and why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, that this also is vanity, for there is no remembrance of the wise more than of the fool forever. Yea, I hated all my labour which I had taken under the sun, because I should leave it unto the man that shall be after me. And who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Two blows land in this passage, and they land on two different parts of a person. The first blow lands on your competence. The second lands on your legacy. Start with the first. Koheleth freely admits that wisdom is better than folly, and he uses one of the strongest comparisons available as far as light excels darkness. He is not a relativist. He does not think it makes no difference how you live. The wise man's eyes are in his head. He can see where he is going. The fool walks in the dark and hits things. In terms of the quality of a life while you are living it, wisdom wins decisively every time. And then he adds the sentence that undoes the comfort. One event happeneth to them all. The wise man dies, the fool dies, same event. The careful man who ate well and read widely and thought clearly and made prudent decisions ends in exactly the same place as the man who wasted everything. Death does not grade on wisdom. It is not a competitive process. It comes for the thoughtful and the thoughtless with identical indifference. Then said I in my heart, as it happeneth to the fool, so it happeneth even to me. And why was I then more wise? That is a genuinely painful question, and it should be allowed to hurt for a moment. Anyone who has invested heavily in becoming good at life, in becoming disciplined, informed, careful, mature, has some version of an unspoken expectation that this investment will be protected, that the universe will, on some level, honor the effort. And the answer here is, it will not. Not under the sun. Wisdom improves the journey, it does not change the destination. This is why in verse 17 he says something shocking. Therefore I hated life. Do not rush past that. There is a season in many serious lives, often around midlife, often after a loss, when the whole enterprise briefly becomes hateful, and the Bible contains a man saying exactly that. If you have been there, or you are there now, you are not outside the faith, you are inside a verse. Now the second blow, and it is the harder one. Verses 18 through 23 are about inheritance, and they are almost unbearably honest. I hated all my labor, because I should leave it unto the man that shall be after me. And who knoweth whether he shall be a wise man or a fool? Everything you build will be handed to someone else. That is guaranteed, and you have no control at all over what they do with it. You may spend 40 years building a business, and the person who inherits it may dismantle it in 18 months. You may build a beautiful home and pour your care into it, and it may be sold and gutted by someone who does not see what you saw. You may build a body of work, a reputation, a way of doing things, and it may be misunderstood and set aside within a decade of your death. And Solomon, of all people, knew what he was talking about. His own son, Rehoboam, inherited the kingdom, listened to bad counsel, spoke arrogantly to the people, and split the nation of Israel in half within a single conversation. Everything David and Solomon had built politically came apart in one generation. The man writing these words could see it coming. So verse 23, all his days are sorrows, and his travail grief. Yea, his heart taketh not rest in the night. This also is vanity. There it is, the insomnia verse. The heart that does not rest at night. And Ecclesiastes traces it directly to this, the exhausting effort of building something you cannot guarantee for people you cannot control, toward an end you cannot secure. Here is the release, and it is real. You are not the guarantor of the outcome, you never were. The moment you accept that what you build will pass into hands you cannot direct, an enormous amount of tension leaves the work. You can still do it excellently. Ecclesiastes will insist that you do, but you can do it as an offering rather than as a defense. You can plant trees you will not sit under, teach children who will forget where they learned it, do good work that gets absorbed into the world without a trace, and be at peace, because the value of the work was never located in your ability to protect its future. Paul, writing much later, put the same truth in resurrection light. Your labor is not in vain in the Lord. Not your labor will survive under the sun. It will not. But in the Lord, above the sun, in the accounting that God keeps. Nothing done in faith is lost, even when every visible trace of it is gone. Teaching 8. There is nothing better. Ecclesiastes 2:24-26. The first appearance of joy. There is nothing better for a man than that he should eat and drink, and that he should make his soul enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw, that it was from the hand of God. For who can eat, or who else can hasten hereunto, more than I? For God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy. After 2 chapters of dismantling, this is the first light through the wall. And it is important that you notice how it arrives, because the placement is deliberate and it teaches you something about how joy actually works. It arrives after the demolition, not before. Koheleth does not open the book with, "Enjoy the simple things." That advice offered early is a platitude, the sort of thing printed on a mug, easy to say and impossible to feel. He offers it only after he has proven exhaustively and personally that the alternatives do not work. He earned the right to say it, and by walking through those chapters with him, you have earned the right to hear it. And look at what it actually is. It is astonishingly small. Eat, drink, enjoy good in your labor. That is the whole prescription. There is no grand vision here, no calling to discover, no destiny to pursue, bread, a cup, and satisfaction in the day's work. After all that building and collecting and searching, the wisest man in the world comes back with, "Have a decent meal and take some pleasure in what you do." But it is not small at all, and here is why. Read the second sentence. This also I saw, that it was from the hand of God. Everything turns on that phrase. This is the first time in the book that Koheleth lifts his eyes above the sun, and the moment he does, the whole picture reorganizes. The bread has not changed. The work has not changed. What has changed is where it comes from. It is no longer something you seized, it is something handed to you. That is the entire difference between a life of grasping and a life of receiving. The same dinner, eaten as a right you have earned, is fuel. Eaten as a gift from the hand of God, it is communion. The same job, performed as the source of your worth, will grind you into dust. Performed as a portion given to you for today, it can be genuinely enjoyable. The object is identical. The posture is completely different, and the posture is what determines whether you can taste anything. Verse 25 asks a pointed question, "Who can eat, or who else can hasten hereunto more than I?" He is saying, with no false modesty, that nobody has had more access to pleasure than he has, and the implication is devastating. Access is not the variable. If it were, he would have been the most satisfied man who ever lived. He was among the least. The capacity to enjoy is not purchased, it is given, which is exactly what verse 26 says. God giveth to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy. Joy is listed alongside wisdom and knowledge as something God gives. It is not an achievement. It is not the natural byproduct of favorable circumstances. Solomon disproves that possibility with his own life. It is a gift, and gifts are received, not manufactured. This changes what you do with your dissatisfaction. If joy were the result of circumstances, the correct response to joylessness would be to change your circumstances. And that is what most people spend their lives doing, rearranging the outer conditions in the hope that the inner state will follow. It rarely does. If joy is a gift from the hand of God, then the correct response to joylessness is to go to the giver. To ask, to say honestly, "I have the things and I cannot taste them. Give me the capacity." And there is one more practical instruction hidden in this passage that I want you to take with you today. Make your soul enjoy good in your labor. That is an active construction. Make your soul. There is something deliberate about it, a discipline of attention. Joy has a receptive side and a participatory side. God gives it. You have to stop long enough to notice that He has. So tonight when you eat, actually taste it. Tomorrow when you work, be present in the hour you are in, rather than in the outcome you are anxious about. This is not a technique. It is the first and smallest form of worship available to a creature living in a vapor. To receive the ordinary hour as a gift and say thank you for it. That is where the book begins to turn. And it will return to this exact note 5 more times before it ends. Watch for it. Eat your bread. Enjoy your work. It is from the hand of God. Teaching. 9. To everything there is a season. Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. The rhythm you have been fighting. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven, a time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill, and a time to heal, a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to get, and a time to lose, a time to keep, and a time to cast away, a time to rend, and a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time of war, and a time of peace. This is the most famous passage in the book, and possibly the most quoted poem in the Old Testament, and its fame has almost destroyed its meaning. It gets read at funerals in a soothing voice, as though it were a gentle reassurance that everything will be all right. It is not that. It is a hard, clear-eyed statement about the structure of reality, and understanding it correctly will do more for your peace than almost anything else in Scripture. 14 pairs, 28 times, and notice what is in them, not just the pleasant ones. There is a time to kill, a time to break down, a time to lose, a time to hate, a time of war. This poem does not describe an ideal world. It describes the actual one, and it insists that the dark half of each pair is as much a part of the ordained rhythm as the light half. 3 things must be seen here. First, you are not in charge of the seasons. The whole force of the passage is that there is a time, appointed, structured, not set by you. Winter does not consult the farmer. You do not decide when the season of building ends and the season of breaking down begins. Enormous human suffering comes from the attempt to hold a season open past its close, or to force one open before it has come. The man who will not accept that a season of gathering has ended and keeps gathering into a season of loss. The woman who will not let a season of mourning run its course because she has decided she should be over it by now. The couple who will not accept that a season of building requires waiting and try to force the harvest early. Second, the dark seasons are not interruptions. This is the part people miss and the part that heals. There is a time to weep. Weeping is not the failure of your life. It is a scheduled part of it. There is a time to mourn. Mourning is not evidence that God has abandoned the timetable. Mourning is on the timetable. When you are in the season of loss, you are not off the map. You are exactly where the map says people are sometimes located. Think of what that does to shame. So much of the pain of a hard season is doubled by the accusation running underneath it. I should not be here. Something has gone wrong with me. Other people are in the building up season, and I am in the breaking down season, and that must mean I have failed. Ecclesiastes 3 removes that accusation. Both halves of every pair are in the poem. Both halves are under heaven. Both halves have a time. Third, there is wisdom in discerning which season you are in, and this is the practical skill the passage is quietly teaching. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. The words are identical. The wisdom is in knowing which of the two this moment calls for, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Neither is right in general. Each is right in its season. This is why wisdom cannot be reduced to rules. Rules tell you what is always right. Wisdom tells you what is right now. And the person who says the perfectly true thing at the wrong moment does damage, while the person who stays silent in the season of silence and speaks in the season of speech becomes, over decades, someone people trust with their lives. So ask yourself, honestly, as this teaching sits with you, what season am I actually in? Not what season do I wish I were in, or what season do the people around me appear to be in. What is the actual season of my life right now? And then, stop fighting it. If it is a season of building, build with everything you have and stop apologizing for your ambition. If it is a season of mourning, mourn and stop demanding of yourself a cheerfulness that is out of season. If it is a season of losing, let it go, because the grip will only injure your hands. The seasons are not yours to set. They are yours to inhabit. Teaching 10. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Ecclesiastes 3:11. Eternity. Set in the human heart. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also he hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. If you take only one verse from these 3 hours, take this one. It is the hinge of the entire book, and it contains the single, most accurate description of the human condition ever written in one sentence. There are 3 claims in it, and each one deserves its own weight. The first claim, he hath made everything beautiful in his time. Not everything is beautiful. Everything is made beautiful in its time. That small preposition changes the entire meaning. The verse is not a naive assertion that all things are lovely. The man writing it has just listed killing and war and losing among the appointed seasons. It is an assertion about timing. Things become beautiful at the point where they are seen in their proper moment within a larger design. You know this from small experience. There is a stage in a piece of music that, heard in isolation, is dissonant and unpleasant, and heard inside, the whole movement is the very thing that makes the resolution land. There is a stitch on the back of an embroidery that looks like chaos, and on the front is the shape of a face. There is a season of your own past that was, at the time, unbearable, and that you can now see, 10 years later, was the thing that produced whatever strength you now have. Nobody can see that while inside it. Everyone can see it eventually, some of it here, the rest of it later. The second claim, he hath set the world in their heart. The Hebrew word here is olam, and it is one of the most extraordinary words in the Old Testament. It is the standard Hebrew word for eternity, for the everlasting, the limitless, the far horizon of time in both directions. The King James renders it the world, and most modern translations render it eternity. God has set eternity in the human heart. Stop and consider what that means about you. You are a temporary creature who has been given an appetite for the permanent. You live inside a vapor, and something has been installed in you that will not be satisfied by vapor. That is why nothing under the sun has ever fully satisfied you, and it is why nothing ever will. It is not because you are ungrateful. It is not because you have not tried hard enough, or achieved enough, or believed enough. It is because you were built with a capacity that this world does not contain enough of anything to fill. This is the answer to the question that has been running underneath your entire life. Why is the satisfaction always temporary? Why does the joy of arrival evaporate? Why, when things are objectively good, is there still something left over, some ache, some restlessness, some sense of a room in you that has furniture in it but no one living there? Because eternity is in your heart. Because you were made for something that does not end, and every good thing you have ever been given does end. The restlessness is not a symptom of a defective life. It is evidence of an accurate design. Augustine said it in a single line 1600 years ago. Thou hast made us for thyself, and our heart is restless until it rests in thee. That is a commentary on this verse. The third claim, and the hardest, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. Here is the tension the verse leaves you in, and it does not resolve it. You have eternity in your heart, and you cannot see the whole picture. You have the appetite for the infinite and the vision of a finite creature. You can sense that there is a design, and you cannot read it. You are given enough to know that meaning exists, and not enough to trace its shape. That is deliberate. And it is the single most important thing to understand about the spiritual life, because it explains why faith is required at all. If you could see the design from beginning to end, you would not need to trust anyone. You would simply know. Faith exists in the exact gap that this verse describes, the space between the eternity in your heart and the limitation of your sight. So what do you do inside that gap? You do not pretend the gap is not there. That is the mistake of the person who insists on explaining every hard providence, who tells the grieving mother what God's purpose was in taking her child, as though the work of God from beginning to end were available for inspection. It is not. Scripture forbids that certainty in this very verse, and you do not conclude from the gap that there is no design. That is the mistake of the person who reasons that because they cannot see the pattern, there is no pattern. The verse forbids that too. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. There is a work that God is making. You simply cannot see it end to end. What you do inside the gap is trust the character of the designer while you wait for the design to become visible. That is all faith has ever been, not certainty about outcomes, confidence in a person, which means the ache you feel, the eternity in your heart that nothing has filled, is not a problem to be solved by finding better things under the sun. It is a compass. It has been pointing in the same direction your whole life, and it has never once pointed at anything on this earth. Teaching 11. Whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Ecclesiastes 3:14-22. The permanence behind the passing. I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken from it, and God doeth it, that men should fear before him. That which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been, and God requireth that which is past. I said in mine heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. We have spent 10 teachings establishing that everything under the sun is vapor. Now for the first time, Koheleth names something that is not. I know that whatsoever God doeth, it shall be forever. Set that beside everything else in the book and feel the contrast. Your works, vapor. God's works, forever. Your building, dismantled by an heir. God's building, nothing can be added to it, nothing can be taken from it. Everything you make is provisional and revisable and eventually undone. Everything he makes is finished and permanent and beyond amendment. Notice the word know. I know. In a book full of hedged observations, I saw, I perceived, I said in my heart, this also is vanity. Here is a flat declaration of certainty. In the middle of all the fog, there is one thing this man is sure of, and it is the durability of God's work. And notice why God does it this way, that men should fear before him. That phrase, the fear of God, is going to be the final word of this entire book. So let us begin to understand it now, because it is badly misunderstood. The fear of God in Hebrew wisdom literature is not terror. It is not the cringing of a slave before a violent master. It is the appropriate response of a small temporary creature standing in front of something infinitely larger, older, and more permanent than itself. It is what you feel at the edge of an ocean in a storm, not the desire to run, but the collapse of your own sense of scale. It is awe with your feet on the ground. And Ecclesiastes says God deliberately arranged the world this way, permanent himself, temporary in every other respect, precisely so that human beings would feel that. The vapor is pedagogical. The transience of everything is not a design flaw. It is the mechanism by which a creature with eternity in its heart is turned toward the only thing that will hold it. Then, verse 15, that which hath been is now, and that which is to be hath already been, and God requireth that which is past. That last phrase in Hebrew is difficult, and translators have rendered it several ways. God seeks what has been driven away. God calls the past to account. God requires what is pursued. Whichever rendering you take, there is a startling implication in it. The past is not simply gone. God requires it. He seeks it out. He calls it back. Nothing that has happened has fallen out of his hands merely because it has fallen out of ours. That is not a small comfort for a person carrying regret. The years you feel you wasted, God requires that which is past. The good you did that nobody saw and nobody remembers, it is not lost in the file of forgotten things. It is sought out. The suffering you went through that seemed to produce nothing, he calls it back. Human memory drops everything. Divine memory drops nothing. And then the passage takes its most audacious turn. In verse 17, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. Read that carefully. Everything in this book has been about what happens under the sun, where the wise and the fool meet the same end, where the righteous perish and the wicked prosper, where the accounting never balances. And here Koheleth says, there is a time there. Not here, there. Somewhere outside the closed system, there is a courtroom that is not under the sun, in which every purpose and every work will finally be reckoned. That is the answer to the deepest injustice you have witnessed or suffered. Not that it will be explained, not that it will make sense to you now, but that it will be judged, that there is a time and a place where the person who was never held accountable will be held accountable, and where the good that was never recognized will be recognized. Verses 18 through 22 then return to the brutal observation that men and animals both die and both return to dust, and that no one can prove by observation what happens to the human spirit afterward. He's being scrupulously honest about the limits of what can be seen, but the honesty of verse 20 does not cancel the certainty of verse 17. Under the sun you cannot see beyond the grave. Above the sun God shall judge. Hold both. That is what this book is teaching you to do, to be completely honest about what you cannot see and completely settled about what God has said. Teaching 12. I considered all the oppressions, Ecclesiastes 4, 1-8, tears, envy, and the man with no one. So I returned and considered all the oppressions that are done under the sun. And behold, the tears of such as were oppressed, and they had no comforter. And on the side of their oppressors there was power, but they had no comforter. Again I considered all travail and every right work, that for this a man is envied of his neighbor. This is also vanity and vexation of spirit. Better is an handful with quietness than both the hands full with travail and vexation of spirit. Then I returned, and I saw vanity under the sun. There is one alone, and there is not a second. Yea, he hath neither child nor brother. Yet is there no end of all his labor, neither is his eye satisfied with riches. Neither saith he, for whom do I labor, and bereave my soul of good? This is also vanity, yea, it is a sore travail. Chapter 4 turns from the interior life to the social one, and it opens with a sentence that should be uncomfortable in any comfortable room. He considered the oppressions done under the sun, and he saw the tears of the oppressed. And twice in a single verse, he says the same devastating thing. They had no comforter. He repeats it. That repetition is the sound of a man who cannot get past what he has seen. There is a particular kind of suffering being named here, and it is not merely the suffering of being harmed. It is the suffering of being harmed and having no one on your side. Power on one side, tears on the other, and nobody in between. That is the specific arithmetic of oppression, and it is why oppression damages people in a way that ordinary hardship does not. Hardship with a comforter is survivable. Hardship with no comforter breaks something. Understand that this is in the Bible. The wisest man in the world looked at the structures of his own society, a society he ruled, and wrote down that the machinery was crushing people and nobody was standing with them. He does not spiritualize it. He does not explain it away. He does not tell the oppressed that God has a plan. He simply records the tears and the absence of comfort and lets it stand as an indictment. For anyone who has ever felt that faith requires you to pretend the world is fairer than it is, here is your permission slip. Scripture itself refuses to pretend. And then, of course, notice what the whole story of the Bible does with the phrase, no comforter. Because Jesus, in the upper room, promised precisely this. I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter, that he may abide with you forever. The exact absence that broke Koheleth's heart is the exact gap the Holy Spirit is sent to fill. Ecclesiastes names the wound, the Gospel names the remedy. That is how these two books talk to each other. Then verse 4 turns to a subtler poison. For every right work a man is envied of his neighbor. This is one of the most piercing observations in the book. He is saying that a substantial portion of all human achievement is driven not by love of the work, not by calling, not by need, but by comparison. People do excellent things because someone else is doing excellent things. The engine underneath a great deal of ambition is envy, and envy is a fuel that burns hot and produces nothing but ash. Test it on yourself, honestly. How much of what you are currently striving toward would you still want if nobody else could see it? If there were no comparison available, no colleague, no sibling, no person from school whose life you monitor from a distance, how much of your ambition would remain? Most people, if they answer truthfully, find that a meaningful fraction of their exhaustion is not about what they want, but about what someone else has. And then the balance in verses 5 and 6, delivered with the precision of a proverb. Verse 5, the fool foldeth his hands together and eateth his own flesh. That is the opposite error, the person who responds to the futility of striving by doing nothing at all and consumes himself. Koheleth is not recommending withdrawal. Verse 6 is the golden mean, and it is one of the most practically useful sentences in Scripture. Better is an handful with quietness than both the hands full with travail and vexation of spirit. Picture the two hands, one hand holding a modest amount and with it quietness. The Hebrew word means rest, tranquility, an unhurried spirit. Two hands full, and with it travail and chasing after wind. And the verdict is delivered without hesitation. The one handful is better. That is a decision most people will face repeatedly across a lifetime. More with turmoil, or less with peace. Our entire culture answers that question one way. Ecclesiastes answers it the other. And notice, it is not saying that poverty is holy or that ambition is sin. It is saying that when you have to trade quietness for a second handful, you are making a bad trade, and that most people make it anyway, over and over, for decades, and call it success. Verses 7 and 8 then give the portrait of where that road ends. A man alone, no child, no brother, no end to his labor, his eye never satisfied with riches, and the terrible question the man never asks himself, the question Koheleth has to ask on his behalf, because the man is too busy to ask it. For whom do I labor and bereave my soul of good? For whom? That is the question. If you are working yourself into the ground, someone should ask you gently, for whom? And if the honest answer is nobody, if the people you originally said you were doing it for have quietly become people you no longer see, then something has gone badly wrong, and no amount of accumulation will fix it, because the problem is not the size of the pile. The problem is that you are alone at the top of it. Teaching 13. 2 are better than 1. Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. The threefold cord. 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. Again, if 2 lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? And if one prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. Having just shown us the man who ends up alone at the top of his pile, Koheleth immediately gives us the antidote. And it is one of the warmest passages in the book. Notice first that this is presented as a matter of plain practical wisdom, not sentiment. He argues it the way a competent person argues anything, with reasons. 2 are better than 1, and here is why. 3 reasons follow, and each one names a different kind of vulnerability. The first is failure. If they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. Falling is assumed. It is not treated as a possibility to be avoided, but as an event that will occur. And the difference between people is not whether they fall, everyone falls, but whether there is a hand available when they do. Woe to him that is alone when he falleth. That is the sentence, not woe to him who falls. Woe to him who falls alone. You can survive an extraordinary amount of failure with one person beside you. You can be destroyed by a moderate failure with nobody. Anyone who has watched a person collapse knows that it is rarely the size of the blow that determines the outcome. It is the presence or absence of someone who shows up. The second is cold. If 2 lie together, then they have heat. But how can one be warm alone? This is drawn from the plain physical reality of the ancient world, travelers sharing a cloak against the desert night, which drops brutally cold once the sun is gone. But it is also a picture of something less literal and more universal. There are seasons that are simply cold. Grief is cold. Depression is cold. The long stretch after a loss, when nothing feels like anything, is cold. And you cannot generate warmth for yourself in those seasons. You cannot. It has to come from another body in the room. If you are in one of those seasons right now, hear this plainly. You are not failing at faith because you cannot warm yourself. Scripture says you cannot. How can one be warm alone? It is a rhetorical question with an obvious answer. Go find someone, not for advice, not for solutions, for heat. The third is attack. If one prevail against him, 2 shall withstand him. There are pressures that will overcome a person standing by themselves and will not overcome 2 people standing together. This is true of temptation, of intimidation, of despair, of the slow erosion of conviction that happens to a believer isolated from other believers. Isolation is not neutral. It is the condition under which almost everything harmful gets stronger. And then the famous line, and it contains a small mystery. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. He has been arguing about 2 the entire passage. 2 are better than 1. That is the thesis stated 3 ways. And then, at the climax, he says 3. Why? The plain reading is a rope-maker's observation. 2 strands twisted together are far stronger than 1, and 3 strands are exponentially stronger still, because a 3-strand rope holds its own twist and does not unravel under load. It is a statement about the compounding strength of community. Each added person does not add strength arithmetically, but multiplies it. But Christians across the centuries have also seen something else in that third strand. And I think it is a legitimate reading, even if it was not Solomon's conscious intent. Two people, joined by a third who is God, form a bond of a different order entirely. Two friends can hold each other up until both are exhausted. Two friends with the Lord in the middle of them have a strand that does not tire. The application here is direct, and I want to make it uncomfortable on purpose. Who is your second? Name them. Not the people who would come to your funeral, the person who would come at 11 at night. If you cannot name one, that is not a small feature of your life. Ecclesiastes treats it as an emergency. The book that says everything is vapor says, without qualification, that being alone in the vapor is worse. And the harder question, are you someone's second? Because the passage cuts both ways, and the way most people acquire a second is by first becoming one. If you have grown isolated, the road out usually does not begin with finding someone to hold you up. It begins with noticing someone who has fallen and going over. Woe to him that is alone. That is the only place in this book where Koheleth uses that word. He does not say woe to the poor, or woe to the forgotten, or woe to the one whose work will be inherited by a fool. He saves it for isolation. Take that seriously. Teaching 14. Keep thy foot. Ecclesiastes 5:1-7. Let thy words be few. Keep thy foot when thou goest to the house of God, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools. For they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven, and thou upon earth. Therefore let thy words be few. When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it, for he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow, than that thou shouldest vow and not pay. For in the multitude of dreams and many words there are also divers vanities. But fear thou God. We have now arrived at the only passage in Ecclesiastes about worship, and it is not what you would expect from a book of wisdom. It is not about liturgy or sacrifice or the right forms. It is about the mouth. Keep thy foot, watch your step, come carefully, be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools. Come to listen before you come to speak or to offer. Be not rash with thy mouth. Let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God. And then the reason, stated with breathtaking simplicity, for God is in heaven, and thou upon earth. Therefore let thy words be few. That sentence deserves a long pause. It is one of the great correctives in Scripture to a religion of noise. God is in heaven, you are on earth. There is an asymmetry between the parties in this conversation that ought to affect how much you talk. Now, be careful. This is not saying God does not want to hear from you. The Bible is full of people arguing with God at length, and the Psalms alone are 150 documents of extended human speech directed at heaven, much of it raw and unfiltered. Koheleth is not contradicting that. He is naming a specific and very common disorder, religious verbosity, as a substitute for actual reverence. You know exactly what he is describing. The prayer that is performed rather than prayed. The stream of religious language that fills every silence because silence is uncomfortable. The person who talks constantly about what God is doing and has, somewhere along the way, stopped listening for it. The vow made in an emotional moment, Lord, if you do this, I will do that, offered freely because words are cheap and the emotion is high. And that is where the passage goes next, to vows. When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it. Better that you should not vow at all than vow and not pay. Consider how many promises have been made to God in hospital corridors, in the aftermath of a near miss, in the desperate hours of a crisis, and how few of them were remembered a month later when the pressure lifted. Ecclesiastes is remarkably severe about this, and note verse 6, "Neither say thou before the angel that it was an error." Do not go back afterward and tell God's messenger that you did not really mean it. He is describing the person who talks his way out of what he talked his way into. The correction the passage offers is not more religious effort. It is fewer words and more listening. And here is the pastoral heart of it, which is easy to miss inside all the warning. A great deal of anxious religion is talkative religion. When people are afraid that God is not going to come through, they talk more. They pray harder in the sense of louder and longer. They bargain, they explain, they justify, they instruct God about the situation as though he required a briefing. And underneath all that speech is a person who does not quite trust that they are heard. Let thy words be few is in that light an invitation to rest. You do not have to convince him. You do not have to perform. You do not have to fill the room with sound to be taken seriously. God is in heaven and you are on earth. And the God who is in heaven already knows the whole situation, including the parts you have not found language for. Jesus said the same thing, almost in the same words. When ye pray, use not vain repetitions, as the heathen do, for they think that they shall be heard for their much speaking. Be not ye therefore like unto them, for your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before ye ask him. Before you ask him. That is why your words can be few. So the practical instruction from this teaching is simple, and most people will find it surprisingly hard. The next time you pray, spend the first portion of it saying nothing. Just be in the room, aware that God is in heaven and you are on earth. Then say the true thing briefly, then stop. The verse ends with the phrase that will end the entire book, "But fear thou God." Not speak much to God. Fear him. Stand before him at the correct scale. And out of that posture, everything else, including your prayers, finds its right size. Teaching 15, "He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver." Ecclesiastes 5:10-12, the arithmetic of never enough. He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver, nor he that loveth abundance with increase. This is also vanity. When goods increase, they are increased that eat them. And what good is there to the owners thereof, saving the beholding of them with their eyes? The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eat little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not suffer him to sleep. Here is the clearest statement in Scripture about why money does not work the way people expect it to, and it is worth memorizing. He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver. Notice the precision of the wording. It does not say the man who has silver will not be satisfied. It says the man who loves silver will not be satisfied by silver. The problem is located in the appetite, not in the amount. And that means the problem cannot be solved by increasing the amount, which is the only solution the man in question is capable of imagining. This is the trap, and it is airtight. The love of money creates a hunger. The hunger interprets itself as a shortage. The shortage suggests an obvious remedy: more. More arrives, the hunger persists, and the mind concludes, reasonably within its own logic, that the amount was insufficient. And so the entire life becomes a sequence of increasingly large disappointments, each one interpreted as evidence that the next one should be bigger. Ask anyone who works in wealth management, and they will tell you the same thing. And they are often astonished by it. The anxiety about money does not decrease with the quantity of money. It changes shape. It becomes anxiety about preservation rather than acquisition, about tax and succession and market exposure rather than about rent. But it does not go away. He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver, 3,000 years old, and it has never once been falsified. Then verse 11 gives the practical mechanism, and it is delightfully mundane. When goods increase, they are increased that eat them. More stuff means more people and more processes consuming it. The bigger house needs maintenance, insurance, heating, cleaning, furniture, security. The bigger income attracts advisors, obligations, requests, expectations. The bigger business requires staff and systems and legal counsel. Every increase in assets brings with it an increase in the number of mouths, literal and figurative, feeding on those assets. And so the owner finds, to his genuine confusion, that having twice as much has not left him with twice as much freedom. It has left him with roughly the same amount of margin and considerably more complexity. What good is there to the owners thereof, saving the beholding of them with their eyes? He owns it. He mostly just looks at it. That is the honest description of a great deal of ownership. And then verse 12, which is the verse I most want you to carry out of this teaching. The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eat little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not suffer him to sleep. Sleep is the metric, not net worth. Sleep. The working man comes home tired from honest labor, eats whatever there is, lies down, and sleeps. His sleep is sweet. The Hebrew word suggests pleasantness, ease, the sleep of someone with nothing pressing on the chest. And the rich man lies awake. The abundance itself will not permit him to sleep. It is not that he chooses to worry. The abundance will not suffer him to. It has become a thing that requires watching. If you want to know whether your relationship with money is healthy, do not check the balance. Check 3 in the morning. What is on your chest when you wake at 3? That is where you have placed your security, and it is telling you, night after night, whether the placement is bearing weight. Now, this is not a teaching against being prosperous. Ecclesiastes never once condemns wealth as such, and it will say in a few verses that riches and the power to enjoy them are a gift of God. Solomon was the richest man alive when he wrote this. The teaching is against loving it. It is against organizing your life around an appetite that structurally cannot be filled, and there is a mercy in learning this early. Because the man who understands verse 10 at 30 makes different decisions for the next 40 years than the man who has to discover it at 70 standing in front of his finished houses. He takes the handful with quietness. He turns down the second job that would cost him his children's evenings. He keeps the smaller house. He sleeps. Teaching 16. God answereth him in the joy of his heart, Ecclesiastes 5:15-6-9, your portion and the sickness of the unenjoyed life. As he came forth of his mother's womb, naked shall he return to go as he came, and shall take nothing of his labor, which he may carry away in his hand. Behold that which I have seen. It is good and comely for one to eat and to drink, and to enjoy the good of all his labor that he taketh under the sun all the days of his life, which God giveth him, for it is his portion. Every man also to whom God hath given riches and wealth, and hath given him power to eat thereof, and to take his portion, and to rejoice in his labor. This is the gift of God. For he shall not much remember the days of his life, because God answereth him in the joy of his heart. We come now to the second appearance of the joy refrain, and it arrives with 2 new words attached that are worth the whole teaching: portion and power. But first, verse 15, which sets the stage with an image nobody forgets. Naked he came, naked he returns, and he shall take nothing of his labor which he may carry away in his hand. Job said it. Paul said it. Every funeral in every culture has said it in one form or another. There is no pocket in a shroud. And yet the observation retains its power because we live, nearly all the time, as though it were not true. We accumulate as though accumulation were transportable. We measure a life by what it gathered, knowing perfectly well that the hand opens at the end and everything falls out. So, given that, what is the correct response? Not renunciation. Watch carefully, because this is where Ecclesiastes parts company with almost every other ancient wisdom tradition. The Stoic response to transience is detachment. Want less, feel less, protect yourself from loss by refusing to love what can be taken. The Eastern response in several traditions is release. Desire itself is the problem. The ascetic response is renunciation. Give it all up in advance. Ecclesiastes says none of those things. It says, eat, drink, and enjoy the good of your labor, because it is your portion. Portion. The Hebrew is helek, and it is a word with a specific history. It is the word used for the allotment of land each Israelite family received in the Promised Land. Your portion was the piece assigned to you, not the whole country, your part of it. You did not choose it, you did not earn it, and it was not the same as your neighbors. It was measured out and given, and your task was to live on it, work it, and be glad in it. That is what your life is, a portion. This particular set of years, this particular body, this particular work, this particular family, these particular limits. It is not everything. It was never going to be everything. It is your allotment handed to you, and the wise response to an allotment is not to stand at the fence, resenting the size of it, but to plant something in the ground you were given. Then the second word, in verse 19, and it is the one that changes lives. God hath given him riches and wealth, and hath given him power to eat thereof. Two separate gifts, the riches and the power to enjoy the riches. And Koheleth is deliberate about separating them, because he has met a great many people who received the first and not the second. Chapter 6 opens by naming exactly that as an evil, and the language is intense. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is common among men, a man to whom God hath given riches, wealth, and honour, so that he wanteth nothing for his soul of all that he desireth, yet God giveth him not power to eat thereof. But a stranger eateth it. This is vanity, and it is an evil disease, an evil disease. That is his diagnosis for the condition of having everything and enjoying none of it. You have met this person. You may be this person, the one who has the house and has never relaxed in it, the one who has achieved the thing and cannot sit still long enough to feel it, the one who takes the holiday and spends it managing the next quarter. The one for whom no meal is quite a meal, because it is being eaten between two obligations. Everything is there. The capacity to receive it is missing, and Ecclesiastes calls that a sickness, not a personality trait, not a work ethic, not a virtue to be proud of. A disease. He goes further in chapter 6 with a startling illustration. A man who lives 2,000 years and sees no good is worse off, he says, than a stillborn child, because at least the child came in vain and went in darkness and found rest. That is a violent comparison, and it is meant to be. He is saying, length of life without the capacity to enjoy it is not a blessing. It is an extended sentence. Then chapter 6, verse 9, delivers the summary line, better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the desire. Better what you can actually see in front of you than the endless roaming of appetite toward what is not here. Better the meal on the table than the meal you are imagining. Better the person in the room than the person you wish were in it. Better this Tuesday than the future Tuesday you are living for. And then the phrase that gives this teaching its name, from chapter 5, verse 20. He shall not much remember the days of his life, because God answereth him in the joy of his heart. The man who receives his portion with joy does not spend much time brooding over his days. He is not constantly auditing his life, calculating whether it has amounted to enough, running the ledger. Why not? Because God answereth him in the joy of his heart. God is occupying him. The joy itself is God's answer, not an explanation of everything, but a response given directly into the heart that quiets the accounting. That is what is available to you today, not an explanation. An answer given in the form of joy, in the middle of a life you still do not fully understand. Teaching 17. The house of mourning, Ecclesiastes 7:1-6, where the heart of the wise is found. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This also is vanity. Chapter 7 turns into a series of better-than sayings, and it opens with the most counterintuitive cluster in the entire Bible. Read it again, and let it be as strange as it actually is. The day of death is better than the day of birth. A funeral is better than a party. Sorrow is better than laughter. This is not morbidity. It is the practical wisdom of a man who has watched what actually forms people. Take the first line. A good name is better than precious ointment. In Hebrew, there is a pun here. Shem, name, and shemen, ointment. And the ointment in question is the expensive perfumed oil that was among the great luxuries of the ancient world. So, reputation outlasts luxury. What people can truthfully say about you when you are gone is worth more than anything you can put on your skin while you are here. And then, connected by that thought, the day of death is better than the day of one's birth. Why? Because on the day of your birth, nothing has been written, potential and nothing else. On the day of your death, the name is finished. The thing has been made. Whatever a good name is, it can only exist at the end. And the end is therefore, in that specific sense, the better day. Then the heart of the passage. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. Note the reason given. For that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. A funeral tells you the truth. A party tells you a story. At a party, the illusion is fully operational. Everyone is well dressed, the lighting is flattering, the conversation is pleasant, and death does not exist for the length of the evening. At a funeral, the actual terms of human existence are on display in a wooden box at the front of the room, and every single person present is quietly aware that they will be in one. The living will lay it to his heart. That is the phrase. Something goes in at a funeral that does not go in anywhere else. Priorities rearrange themselves in a graveyard in a way that no amount of good advice can accomplish. People walk out of funerals and call their fathers. They walk out of funerals and reconsider a job. They walk out and forgive someone. The house of mourning does something to a person that the house of feasting cannot do. Then, verse 3, sorrow is better than laughter. For by the sadness of the countenance the heart is made better. Read that carefully because it is easily misused. It is not saying sadness is good in itself, and it is emphatically not saying that a person suffering from depression is being improved by it. It is saying something about the formative capacity of grief, that sorrow gets into the interior of a person and does work there that pleasure cannot do. Everyone who has genuinely grieved knows this. You do not come out of grief the same person. Something is deepened. Compassion arrives. The capacity to sit with another person's pain without needing to fix it arrives. A certain kind of shallowness dies. And verse 6 gives the contrast in a wonderfully vivid image. As the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of the fool. Picture the ancient kitchen. You have a pot to heat, and you throw dry thorn branches under it, because that is what is at hand. They catch instantly. Enormous noise, tremendous flare, a great deal of crackling and light. And then within moments they are ash, and the pot is barely warm. That is entertainment. Instant, loud, brilliant, and it heats nothing. That is a life organized around distraction, a great deal of crackle and no warmth at the end of it. And the crackling is precisely what a person turns to when they cannot bear to be in the house of mourning. We fill the silence with noise, because in the silence we would have to lay something to heart. Here is the practical challenge from this teaching, and it is one of the most useful things in the book. Do not avoid the house of mourning. When someone in your life is grieving and you do not know what to say, and it would be so much easier to send a message than to go. You do not have to say anything worth saying. You have to be in the room. And you will find, as everyone finds, that you did not go there only for them. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning. Something will be given to you there that the house of mirth does not stock. Teaching 18. Say not thou, what is the cause? Ecclesiastes 7 to 10:14. Nostalgia and the day set over against the day. Say not thou, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. Consider the work of God, for who can make that straight which he hath made crooked? In the day of prosperity be joyful, but in the day of adversity consider. God also hath set the one over against the other, to the end that man should find nothing after him. Two teachings sit close together here, and both are enormously practical. The first is verse 10, and it is the Bible's clearest word about nostalgia. Say not, what is the cause that the former days were better than these? For thou dost not inquire wisely concerning this. That is a rebuke, delivered gently but unmistakably. Not, the former days were not better. He does not even argue the historical point. He says the question itself is unwise. You are not asking wisely. Something is wrong with the question before we get anywhere near the answer. Why is it unwise? Several reasons, and they compound. First, memory is not a recording device. It is an editor, and it edits with a heavy hand. It keeps the golden afternoon and discards the 11 months of anxiety surrounding it. It preserves the feeling of the old job and quietly deletes the reason you left. Every generation remembers a past that did not exist in the form they remember it. And the further back it goes, the more the editing has had time to work. Second, and more subtly, the former days often feel better because you know how they ended. The past is finished, and finished things are not frightening. The reason last decade feels calmer than this one is not that it was calmer. It is that you have already survived it. You are comparing a resolved period with an unresolved one, and unresolved always feels worse every time, regardless of the actual content. Third, and this is the pastoral heart, nostalgia is a thief because it takes your attention out of the only day you have been given. Ecclesiastes has spent 6 chapters teaching you to receive your portion, and your portion is today. Not 2009. Not the years before the diagnosis, before the divorce, before the company changed, before the children grew. Those days are not on offer. Today is on offer. And a person who spends today grieving a past that has been edited into something it never was, has lost 2 days, the one they are mourning and the one they are living. Then comes verse 13, consider the work of God, for who can make that straight, which he hath made crooked? We heard this line back in chapter 1, where it was a statement of frustration. That which is crooked cannot be made straight. Here it returns with a completely different frame. There the crookedness was a wall you kept hitting. Here it is the work of God, and you are told to consider it. That is a significant development. The bent things in your life are not simply defects in a broken world. Some of them are, in ways you cannot see, His work, and you are not going to straighten them. The question, who can make that straight, expects the answer, nobody. The limitation you have been fighting for years, the door that will not open, the circumstance that will not resolve, you may as well stop applying force to it, because it has not been left crooked by accident. And then verse 14, which I regard as one of the 10 most useful verses in Scripture for daily life. In the day of prosperity be joyful, but in the day of adversity consider, God also hath set the one over against the other, to the end that man should find nothing after him. 2 instructions for 2 kinds of days. On the good day, be joyful, not cautious, not braced. Not spending the good day scanning the horizon for the arrival of the bad one, which is what anxious people do with every good day they are given, and it costs them the day. When it is good, be glad in it, fully. Without apology and without hedging. On the hard day, consider. The Hebrew means look, see, reflect, not despair, not deny, not distract. Consider. The hard day is for thinking. It is for the kind of examination that the good day makes impossible, because on the good day you are too pleased to look closely at anything. And the reason given, God hath set the one over against the other. He alternates them deliberately. And the phrase to the end, that man should find nothing after him, means so that no one can figure out what is coming next. You cannot forecast your life. That is by design. If you could predict the sequence, you would never need to trust anyone, and the trusting is the point. So he mixes the days, gives you no schedule, and asks 2 simple things of you. Enjoy the good ones, and think in the hard ones. Teaching 19. Be not righteous over much. Ecclesiastes 7:15-29. Perfectionism, overheard words, and many inventions. All things have I seen in the days of my vanity. There is a just man that perisheth in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man that prolongeth his life in his wickedness. Be not righteous over much, neither make thyself over wise. Why shouldest thou destroy thyself? Also, take no heed unto all words that are spoken, lest thou hear thy servant curse thee. For oftentimes also thine own heart knoweth that thou thyself likewise hast cursed others. Lo, this only have I found, that God hath made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. This is one of the most misused passages in the Bible, so let us be careful with it, because handled rightly it is a genuine deliverance for a certain kind of exhausted person. First, the observation in verse 15, which is the honest thing almost nobody says from a pulpit. There is a just man that perisheth in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man that prolongeth his life in his wickedness. He has seen good people destroyed by their goodness. He has seen bad people flourish for decades. He states it as observed fact and offers no explanation, because there is none available under the sun. If you have ever watched a person of real integrity be ruined by the very integrity that made them refuse to compromise, while someone with no scruples at all rose past them, you have seen exactly what Koheleth saw, and you are permitted to say so out loud. Then verse 16, Be not righteous over much, neither make thyself over wise. Why shouldest thou destroy thyself? Now this is not a license for moderate sin. Verse 17 immediately balances it. Be not overmuch wicked, neither be thou foolish. Why shouldest thou die before thy time? He is not recommending a comfortable middle path between holiness and wickedness. The Hebrew of verse 16 carries the sense of making yourself righteous, a reflexive form. It is about self-generated righteousness. It is about the person who has made a project out of their own moral flawlessness. That person destroys themselves. And Ecclesiastes says so plainly, Why shouldest thou destroy thyself? You have seen this destruction. The person whose standards are so exacting that no one, including themselves, can meet them. The believer who cannot receive grace because they are too busy earning it. the one who takes every failure as a verdict on their entire worth, the one who is scrupulous about small religious details and cold toward actual human beings, the one who cannot rest because resting feels like moral negligence. Over-righteousness is not extra holiness. It is a form of self-worship that uses holiness as its material, and it exhausts everyone it touches, starting with the person doing it. The antidote is in verse 18. It is good that thou shouldest take hold of this. Yea, also from this withdraw not thine hand, for he that feareth God shall come forth of them all. The fear of God, again. The one who genuinely reveres God is delivered from both ditches, from the recklessness of the wicked and from the self-destroying strain of the over-righteous, because a person who is actually in awe of God is not trying to be impressive. He knows the scale. He is not managing a performance. Then verse 21, and this one is startlingly practical. Take no heed unto all words that are spoken, lest thou hear thy servant curse thee. Do not listen to everything people say about you. Do not go looking. If you make a habit of collecting every remark, you will eventually hear something from someone close to you that will wound you badly. And Koheleth adds the sentence that removes your right to be devastated by it. For oftentimes also thine own heart knoweth that thou thyself likewise hast cursed others. You have said unkind things about people in a bad moment, things you did not fully mean, said in frustration, that would have wounded them terribly had they heard them. So when you overhear a remark, remember your own bad moments before you build a case. In an age where the private remarks of others are more available to us than at any point in human history, the group chat, the comment section, the message screenshot and forwarded, this is a wisdom teaching of enormous urgency. Take no heed unto all words that are spoken. You are not required to know what everyone thinks of you. Almost nothing good has ever come of finding out. And then the summary of the chapter, verse 29, one of the most compact theological statements in the Old Testament. God hath made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. 2 clauses, and between them lies the entire history of the human race. God made man upright. That is the original condition, straight, whole, functioning as designed. Whatever is wrong with human beings is not original equipment. It is not how we came out of the factory. Everyone you meet, including the worst of them, is a good design in a damaged condition. But they have sought out many inventions. The Hebrew word suggests schemes, devices, calculations, elaborate contrivances. Humanity took a straight thing and complicated it. Every distortion of human life is an invention laid over an upright original. Every system of exploitation, every self-justification, every complicated arrangement we construct to avoid a simple obedience. And this explains why so much of wisdom feels like subtraction rather than addition. You do not become wise by acquiring more inventions. You become wise by having some of them removed until something closer to upright is left. Teaching 20. Who is as the wise man? Ecclesiastes 8, 1-17. No man rules the wind and the delay that tests you. Who is as the wise man? And who knoweth the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom maketh his face to shine, and the boldness of his face shall be changed. There is no man that hath power over the spirit to retain the spirit, neither hath he power in the day of death, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily. Therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Though a sinner do evil 100 times, and his days be prolonged, yet surely I know that it shall be well with them that fear God. Then I beheld all the work of God, that a man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. Chapter 8 begins with something lovely and easy to miss. A man's wisdom maketh his face to shine. Wisdom shows. It changes the face, it softens the hardness. The boldness of his face shall be changed, meaning the harsh, defensive rigidity of a person's expression is altered by wisdom. You have met people like this, usually older. There is a settledness in the face, a lack of strain, an absence of the need to prove anything. They are not more beautiful in any conventional sense. They are lit differently. That is what decades of wisdom does to a countenance, and it is one of the few things in this book that genuinely accumulates. Then verse 8, and it is a hammer. There is no man that hath power over the Spirit to retain the Spirit, neither hath he power in the day of death, and there is no discharge in that war. 4 limits in one verse. You cannot hold your own breath in, you cannot postpone the day. There is no discharge from this war, no exemption, no leave, no substitute. Some translations render the first clause as, no man has power over the wind to restrain the wind, since the Hebrew word ruach means both wind and spirit, and either way the point is identical. The thing that animates you moves as it pleases, and you do not command it. We live surrounded by the illusion of control. Medicine, insurance, security systems, contingency plans, all of them good and none of them able to touch this verse. And every honest person eventually meets the moment when the illusion fails and the fact arrives. Then verse 11, one of the most psychologically acute sentences in Scripture. Because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. This is the mechanism of moral decay, described in a single line. It is not that people conclude that wrong is right. It is that consequences are slow, and slow consequences feel like no consequences, and no consequences quietly rewrites what a person believes is possible. Watch how it works. The first small dishonesty produces nothing bad. So does the second. By the 20th, the person is no longer being reckless. They have learned from experience that nothing happens. Their heart becomes fully set. The Hebrew is vivid, filled up, made complete, settled. The delay did not merely permit the evil, it manufactured the confidence that made the evil habitual. This is why long-delayed judgment is so dangerous, and it explains something about your own life. The area where you feel most secure in a compromise is precisely the area where consequences have been slowest. That is not evidence of safety. That is the mechanism of verse 11 operating on you, and Koheleth immediately braces it with the counterweight in verses 12 and 13. Though a sinner do evil 100 times, and his days be prolonged, yet surely I know that it shall be well with them that fear God. Surely I know. There is that certainty again, breaking through the fog. He has just admitted he can see wicked people prospering for 100 repetitions. He does not deny the data. He simply refuses to draw the obvious conclusion from it because he knows something the data cannot show him. It shall be well with them that fear God. That is faith stated in its most honest form, not, I can see that the righteous prosper. He can see that they often do not, but I know it shall be well. The knowing comes from somewhere other than the seeing, and then the chapter ends in one of the great admissions of the book. Verse 17, I beheld all the work of God, that a man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun, because though a man labor to seek it out, yet he shall not find it, ye further. Though a wise man think to know it, yet shall he not be able to find it. Read that last clause slowly. Though a wise man think to know it, yet shall he not be able to find it. He is warning specifically about the wise, about the person who has spent a life acquiring understanding and has begun to believe they have the system figured out. Even that person will not find it. There is a limit, and the limit does not move for expertise. This is the point in Ecclesiastes where you are meant to finally set down a burden you may have been carrying since childhood, the burden of needing it all to make sense before you can rest. It will not make sense, not fully, not here. and you are permitted to rest anyway, because the resting was never supposed to depend on the understanding. It was supposed to depend on the character of the one who does understand. Teaching. 21. A living dog is better than a dead lion. Ecclesiastes 9:1-6. The honesty that sets you free. For all this I considered in my heart, even to declare all this, that the righteous and the wise and their works are in the hand of God. No man knoweth either love or hatred by all that is before them. All things come alike to all. There is one event to the righteous and to the wicked. For to him that is joined to all the living there is hope. For a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything, neither have they any more a reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Chapter 9 opens with the single most comforting phrase in the entire book, and most readers rush past it to get to the difficult part. Do not. The righteous and the wise and their works are in the hand of God. That is where they are. Not in their own hands. The book has spent 8 chapters proving that nothing stays in your hands. In his, the people and their works held. That is the frame for everything that follows, and everything that follows is hard. So hold on to the frame, because the next line is, no man knoweth either love or hatred by all that is before them. This is one of the most liberating sentences in Scripture, and it is almost never preached. It says, you cannot read God's disposition toward you from your circumstances. You cannot look at what is in front of you, the health or the sickness, the success or the failure, the open door or the closed one, and deduce from it whether you are loved or not. The circumstantial evidence does not decode. It never has. Think about how much suffering that removes if you believe it. The person whose business failed and who has spent 3 years wondering what God is punishing. The one whose prayers for a child went unanswered and who has concluded quietly that they must be outside God's favor. The one who reads every hardship as a message and every blessing as approval, and who is therefore on a permanent emotional treadmill governed entirely by the last thing that happened. No man knoweth either love or hatred by all that is before them. Stop reading the tea leaves of your circumstances. They do not say what you think they say. They do not say anything. If you want to know whether God loves you, you will have to look somewhere other than at your week. And Scripture tells you exactly where to look, at a cross, where the demonstration was made once, publicly, and settled forever. Then the hard part. All things come alike to all. There is one event to the righteous and to the wicked. Same weather, same diseases, same accidents, same economy, same ending. Righteousness does not purchase an exemption from the general conditions of human life. Jesus said the same. Your Father in heaven maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. And then the strange proverb that gives this teaching its name, a living dog is better than a dead lion. Understand the force of it in the ancient world. The lion was the emblem of royalty, courage, and majesty, the noblest animal in the imagination of the Near East. The dog was not the beloved household companion it is to us. It was a scavenger, an unclean animal, a creature that ate refuse in the street. The comparison is deliberately shocking. The lowest living thing outranks the noblest dead thing. Why? Because to him that is joined to all the living there is hope. That is the argument. Not that life is pleasant, not that the dog's existence is enviable. Only this, the living have hope, and the dead under the sun have run out of options. While you are breathing, something can still change. While you are breathing, you can still repent, still reconcile, still begin, still receive. The dead lion's magnificence is finished. The living dog's day is not. If you are in a season where you feel like the dog, undignified, scavenging, far from anything majestic, watching people who look like lions, this verse is aimed directly at you. You are alive. There is hope. The comparison you are making between yourself and the impressive people is the wrong comparison entirely, because the only line that matters is the one between the living and the dead, and you are on the right side of it today, which is exactly why the next 4 verses are the ones we will look at next, and they are the most joyful command in the book. Having established that you are alive, and that being alive is the only advantage anyone actually has, Koheleth is about to tell you what to do with the fact. Teaching 22. Go thy way, eat thy bread with joy. Ecclesiastes 9:7-10. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, go thy way, eat thy bread with joy, and drink thy wine with a merry heart. For God now accepteth thy works. Let thy garments be always white, and let thy head lack no ointment. Live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of the life of thy vanity, which he hath given thee under the sun, all the days of thy vanity. For that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labor which thou takest under the sun. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might, for there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave, whither thou goest. This is the summit of the book's practical teaching, and everything in the previous 9 chapters exists to make it possible to hear. Go thy way, that is a release. Go on, move. He is dismissing you from the seminar and sending you back into your life. Eat thy bread with joy, and drink thy wine with a merry heart. Notice your bread, not better bread, the bread you actually have. And the instruction is not to eat it dutifully or resignedly or with a sense of proportion. With joy, with a merry heart. And then the clause that makes it possible, and it is one of the most surprising sentences in the Old Testament. For God now accepteth thy works. Now, not eventually when you have improved. God has already accepted. The joy comes after the acceptance, not before it, which is the exact structure of grace, appearing here 1,000 years before Paul wrote it out in full. You are not eating your bread with joy in order to earn something. You are eating it with joy because the verdict is already in. Then 2 images from ancient life that need a moment of translation. Let thy garments be always white. White linen in the ancient Near East was festival clothing, what you wore to a celebration, impractical for labor and expensive to maintain. Let thy head lack no ointment, the perfumed oil applied at a feast. So dress for the party. Keep the oil on your head. Live in a posture of celebration rather than of siege. Say that to a person who has spent 20 years in survival mode, and watch what happens in their face. Many people are dressed for a funeral internally, permanently, regardless of the day. This verse tells them to change clothes. Live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of the life of thy vanity. Notice how the vapor language returns even in the middle of the joy. He never lets you forget the brevity. But here the brevity is not a reason for despair. It is the reason for the joy. It is short. Therefore live in it. The transience is exactly what makes today worth being present in. And then, verse 10, which may be the most energizing sentence in the entire Old Testament. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. Consider how astonishing this is coming from this man. He has just spent 9 chapters proving that your work does not last, that your name will be forgotten, that your heir may be a fool, that the wise and the foolish share one ending. And his conclusion is not do less. It is do it with everything you have. That is the paradox at the center of Ecclesiastes, and it is the mark of genuine spiritual maturity. The person who has fully accepted that their work will not last is finally free to do it excellently, because they are no longer doing it to secure anything. The pressure is off, and the effort goes up. Anxiety, contrary to what we assume, is a poor engine. It produces frantic activity and mediocre work. Freedom produces better work than fear ever has. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, not the grand assignment you are waiting to be given. Whatever is in front of your hand right now. The email, the shift, the diaper, the invoice, the difficult conversation you have been postponing. Wisdom is not the discovery of a special task. It is doing the ordinary task at hand with your whole self. And the reason, for there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave, whither thou goest. The window is open now. It will not always be. This is not a threat. It is an urgency. Whatever you are going to do with your hands, your mind, your affection, this is the period in which it is possible. So take one thing from this teaching into tomorrow. Eat something and taste it. Wear the good shirt on an ordinary Tuesday. Say the affectionate thing you keep not saying. Do the small work in front of you as if it mattered, because in the only accounting that lasts, it does. God now accepteth thy works. Teaching 23, the race is not to the swift. Ecclesiastes 9:11 to 10:20, time and chance, and the small things that undo us. I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all. For man also knoweth not his time, as the fishes that are taken in an evil net, and as the birds that are caught in the snare, so are the sons of men snared in an evil time, when it falleth suddenly upon them. 5 categories, 5 expectations, 5 reversals, and every one of them is a place where we quietly believe the world owes us an outcome. The race is not to the swift. The fastest runner does not always win. He pulls a hamstring in the 3rd mile. Nor the battle to the strong. The stronger army loses because of weather or intelligence failure or one bad decision by one tired officer. Neither yet bread to the wise. Intelligence does not guarantee a living. There are brilliant people who cannot pay rent and always have been. Nor yet riches to men of understanding. Understanding markets is not the same as profiting from them, nor yet favor to men of skill. The most skilled person in the room frequently is not the one who is promoted, and everyone who has worked anywhere knows it. But time and chance happeneth to them all. The Hebrew phrase is literally time and occurrence, the moment, and what happens to be happening in it. This is Scripture's acknowledgement that outcomes in this world are not a clean function of merit. Preparation matters, skill matters, character matters, and none of them controls the result because timing and circumstance intervene constantly in every field of human effort. There are 2 ways to receive this, and they lead to completely different lives. The bitter reading is, "Nothing I do matters, so why try?" That is not the intent, and the previous teaching has already ruled it out. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. The freeing reading is this: you are responsible for your effort, and you are not responsible for your outcome. That distinction, held firmly, will change how you live. It means that when things go well, you can be grateful rather than proud, because you know that swiftness did not win the race by itself. And when things go badly, you can grieve without self-contempt, because you know that failure is not automatic evidence of inadequacy. Time and chance happened. They happen to everyone. This also produces a specific kind of compassion. If you believe outcomes track merit, then everyone who is struggling must have earned their struggle, and you will be quietly hard on the poor, the failed, and the sick. Verse 11 demolishes that. Some of the people around you who are having a hard time are not having a hard time because of a defect. Time and chance happen to them, as it will eventually happen to you. Then verse 12 adds the sharpest edge. Man also knoweth not his time. The fish in the net, the bird in the snare, caught suddenly with no warning in the middle of an ordinary day. Every person who has received a phone call that split their life in 2 knows precisely this image. Nothing announced it. It simply fell. Chapter 10 then follows with a series of proverbs about wisdom and folly, and they share a common theme worth naming. Small things have disproportionate effects. Dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savour. A whole jar of expensive perfume ruined by a few insects, so doth a little folly him that is in reputation for wisdom and honour. A reputation built over 30 years is undone by one afternoon. That is not fair, and it is entirely true. He that diggeth a pit shall fall into it, and whoso breaketh an hedge, a serpent shall bite him. Consequences have a way of returning to their author. If the iron be blunt, and he do not whet the edge, then must he put to more strength, but wisdom is profitable to direct. The blunt axe is one of the great practical proverbs in Scripture. Most people, when the work gets hard, respond by swinging harder. The wise response is to stop and sharpen. More strength is what folly applies, better direction is what wisdom applies, and the small, poignant line in verse 19, "A feast is made for laughter, and wine maketh merry, but money answereth all things." That last clause is often misquoted as an endorsement of wealth. In context, it is closer to an observation with an edge. Money is what everything ends up being about in a world under the sun, which is exactly why the next chapter will lift its eyes. Teaching 24. Cast thy bread upon the waters. Ecclesiastes 11:1-6. Sowing when you cannot see. Cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. Give a portion to 7, and also to 8, for thou knowest not what evil shall be upon the earth. He that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. As thou knowest not what is the way of the Spirit, nor how the bones do grow in the womb of her that is with child, even so thou knowest not the works of God, who maketh all. In the morning sow thy seed, and in the evening withhold not thine hand, for thou knowest not whether shall prosper either this or that, or whether they both shall be alike good. We are near the end now, and the book makes a decisive turn. For 11 chapters it has been describing what cannot be known. Now finally, it tells you how to act inside that ignorance, and the answer is not caution. The answer is generous, energetic, wide-open action. Cast thy bread upon the waters, for thou shalt find it after many days. The image has been read 2 ways, and both are true to life. It may refer to maritime trade, sending grain out on ships across the sea, an investment you cannot see, cannot supervise, and will not hear about for a long season, but which returns in time. Or it may be simpler still, throwing bread onto water, the most apparently wasteful act imaginable, and finding after many days that it came back. Either way, the meaning is the same. Do good you cannot track. Send it out with no receipt. Give where you will never see the outcome. The return, if it comes, will come after many days, long enough that you will not be able to connect it to what you sowed. Give a portion to 7, and also to 8. That is Hebrew for, spread it widely, more widely than seems necessary. Why? For thou knowest not what evil shall be upon the earth. You do not know which direction disaster will come from, so distribute your generosity broadly. There is even a shrewd practical wisdom underneath the kindness here, but the shrewdness never cancels the generosity, it directs it. And then verse 4, the verse for anyone who has been stuck for a long time, he that observeth the wind shall not sow, and he that regardeth the clouds shall not reap. Picture the farmer standing at the edge of the field with the seed bag on his shoulder. He is watching the sky. Conditions are not ideal. There is wind, and wind scatters seed wastefully. There are clouds, and rain at the wrong moment ruins a harvest. So he waits for a better day. And a better day comes with a different problem, and he waits again. And the season closes, and the man has a full bag of seed and an empty field, and he can give you an excellent, informed, technically accurate reason for every single day he did not sow. That is the portrait of a life lost to waiting for certainty. You know exactly where this applies to you. There is something you have been not doing while you wait for conditions. The conversation you will have when the timing is right. The change you will make when things settle down. The step of obedience you will take when you feel more sure. The apology you will offer when you have worked out how it will be received. And the wind has been blowing for years and the bag is still full. Ecclesiastes says, "Sow anyway." Not recklessly. The whole book is a monument to clear sight, but without waiting for a certainty that this world does not issue. Verse 5 gives the reason, and it is beautiful. As thou knowest not what is the way of the Spirit, nor how the bones do grow in the womb of her that is with child, even so thou knowest not the works of God who maketh all. He picks the most ordinary miracle available. A pregnant woman. Nobody understands how it works, not in that age and in the deepest sense, not in ours either. The bones grow. Something is being knit together in the dark, without your supervision, without your comprehension, and it does not require your understanding in order to happen. That is what God's work is like in your life and in the lives of the people you are praying for. Hidden, in the dark, not available for inspection, growing. And therefore, verse 6, in the morning sow thy seed, and in the evening withhold not thine hand, for thou knowest not whether shall prosper either this or that, or whether they both shall be alike good. Sow in the morning, and sow again at night. Since you cannot know which effort will take, make many efforts. Since you cannot identify the fruitful conversation in advance, have all of them. Since you do not know which kindness will land, be kind repeatedly. The ignorance that could have justified paralysis becomes, in wise hands, the argument for abundance. That is the mature answer to a life lived in vapor. You cannot see, so sow widely, sow generously, sow in the morning and in the evening, and leave the growing to the one who knits bones together in the dark. Teaching 25. Truly, the light is sweet. Ecclesiastes 11:7-10. Rejoice and remember the days of darkness. Truly the light is sweet, and a pleasant thing it is for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man live many years, and rejoice in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. All that cometh is vanity. Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth. And let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth, and walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. But know thou that for all these things God will bring thee into judgment. Therefore remove sorrow from thy heart, and put away evil from thy flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. Truly the light is sweet. After everything, after the vapor and the chasing after wind, and the crooked things that cannot be straightened, and the wise man dying like the fool, this old king writes, the light is sweet, and it is a pleasant thing for the eyes to behold the sun. Do not move past that too quickly. It is the sound of a man who has lost every illusion and has come out the other side still able to enjoy a morning. That is not naivety. Naivety is enjoying the morning because you have not yet noticed what the world is like. This is something rarer and much stronger, the enjoyment of a morning by a man who knows exactly what the world is like. That is the maturity Ecclesiastes is trying to produce in you. Not cynicism, which is what disillusionment usually hardens into. Not sentimentality, which is what people cling to in order to avoid disillusionment. Something else, an unillusioned gladness. The capacity to say, with full knowledge of the vapor, that it is a pleasant thing for the eyes to behold the sun. Then verse 8, and it is the balance. If a man live many years and rejoice in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they shall be many. He will not let you have one without the other. Rejoice in all your years, and remember the dark days are coming, and there will be many of them. That is not a mood killer inserted out of pessimism. It is the same instruction from chapter 7 in a different key. The joy must be big enough to hold the knowledge. or it is not real joy, it is only distraction, and the knowledge must not be permitted to cancel the joy, or you have simply surrendered. Then the passage turns and addresses the young directly, and it is one of the most surprising exhortations in Scripture. Rejoice, O young man, in thy youth, and let thy heart cheer thee in the days of thy youth, and walk in the ways of thine heart, and in the sight of thine eyes. This is not what religious literature usually says to the young. Religious literature usually says, be careful, restrain yourself. Youth is dangerous. Instead, here is an old man saying, enjoy it. Let your heart cheer you. Walk in the ways of your heart. Go and live. And then, in the same breath, without softening either half, but know thou that for all these things God will bring thee into judgment. Both. Rejoice and know there is an accounting. Live fully and live answerably. Ecclesiastes refuses the two easy positions: the fearful religion that cannot enjoy anything, and the reckless freedom that answers to nothing. It puts them in a single sentence and hands them to you together. If you are young and this reaches you, take both halves seriously. These years are yours. They will not repeat, and they will feel long while you are in them, and impossibly short afterward. Do not waste them being afraid. And do not waste them pretending nothing counts. Verse 10, therefore remove sorrow from thy heart, and put away evil from thy flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. The word for sorrow here means vexation, anger, the corrosive irritation that eats at a person from inside. Remove it. That is an instruction, not a wish. Some things must be actively put out. Bitterness does not evaporate on its own. You have to decide about it, sometimes repeatedly, sometimes for years. And put away evil from thy flesh. Deal with what is damaging you physically and morally, and deal with it now while the dealing is easier. For childhood and youth are vanity, vapor, even the years that feel the most invincible. They are mist, and they are going, and they are already going faster than you believe, which brings us to the final and greatest passage in the book. Teaching. 26. Remember now thy Creator. Ecclesiastes 12:1-7. The poem of the failing house. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. While the sun, or the light, or the moon, or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern, then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. This is the last great poem of the Old Testament wisdom literature, and it is an allegory of aging so exact that physicians have written about its accuracy. Let us read it as it was meant to be read, as a house slowly failing and as a body slowly failing at the same time. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth. That is the command, and everything after it is the reason. Remember. The Hebrew does not mean merely to recall a fact. It means to call to mind in a way that determines action, to hold something before you so that it shapes what you do. And notice the object, your Creator, not your religion, not your obligations, the one who made you. Remember, while you still have the strength to build a life around the remembering, the fact that you did not make yourself. Now the poem, and it is stunning. The keepers of the house shall tremble. The arms and hands which guarded the house begin to shake. The strong men shall bow themselves. The legs and back, once straight, now bent. The grinders cease because they are few. The teeth, which grind, are going. Those that look out of the windows be darkened, the eyes dim. The doors shall be shut in the streets, the ears close. The world outside grows faint, and the person withdraws from it. He shall rise up at the voice of the bird, the light sleep of the old, waking at the first bird before dawn. All the daughters of music shall be brought low. The voice thins, and music itself becomes hard to hear. They shall be afraid of that which is high, and fears shall be in the way. The stairs become a hazard, and the walk to the corner becomes something to be planned rather than done. The almond tree shall flourish, the almond blossoms white, and the hair goes white. The grasshopper shall be a burden, even something weightless is now heavy. Desire shall fail, appetite itself, for food, for pleasure, for the things that used to pull, quietly stops pulling, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. There has never been a more precise or more tender description of what happens to a human body over 80 years. And it is not written with disgust. It is written with the sorrow of a man who has watched and who is inside it himself. Then 4 images of the end, and each one is a thing breaking that cannot be repaired. The silver cord loosed, the golden bowl broken, the pitcher broken at the fountain, the wheel broken at the cistern. 2 of them are precious, silver and gold, the lamp hanging by its cord, the beautiful vessel. 2 of them are ordinary and functional, the clay water jar, the wheel that draws water up from the well. Together they say, what is beautiful about you and what is useful about you will both at the same moment stop. And then verse 7, which is the reason this whole poem is not despair. Then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. 2 returns in opposite directions. The dust goes down. That is the visible half, and it is the half that everyone sees at a graveside. It goes back to what it was made of, and the spirit goes up unto God who gave it. The ruach, the breath that God breathed into the first man's nostrils in the garden, goes back to the one who breathed it out. That single line changes the whole book. Everything under the sun is vapor, yes, but you are not only under the sun. There is something in you that was given by God and that returns to God, and the failing of the house is not the end of the one who lived in it. This is why the command comes when it does. Remember now thy Creator, now, while the keepers of the house are still steady, while the grinders are still many, while the light is still sweet. Not because there is no mercy for those who remember late, there is, and Scripture is full of the evidence, but because a life built on that remembrance from early on is a different life, all the way through, and because the failing house is a harder place to begin the work than the strong one. If you are young, begin now. If you are not young, begin now. The command has only one adverb in it, and the adverb is now. Teaching. 27. Fear God and keep his commandments. Ecclesiastes 12:9-14. The conclusion of the whole matter. And moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge. Yea, he gave good heed, and sought out, and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought to find out acceptable words, and that which was written was upright, even words of truth. The words of the wise are as goads, and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. And further, by these, my son, be admonished. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God, and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. We have arrived. 12 chapters, 38 uses of the word vapor, 29 references to what happens under the sun, and now the summary. And it is one of the most solid landings in all of Scripture. But first, 3 verses about the nature of what you have just received, because they matter. The words of the wise are as goads, and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies. Two images, and they are opposites, and wisdom is both. A goad is a long, pointed stick used to drive livestock. It is not comfortable. It is applied to the animal that has stopped moving, and its entire purpose is to make standing still less appealing than walking forward. Some of what you have heard over these hours has functioned that way. It was meant to. The verses about the man alone at the top of his pile, about the abundance that will not let a man sleep, about the fool who watches the wind and never sows, those are goads. They are supposed to prod. A nail fastened is the opposite image entirely. It is something driven in and made secure, a fixed point you can hang weight on. That which is crooked cannot be made straight. He hath set eternity in their heart. Two are better than one. The spirit shall return unto God who gave it. Those are nails. They do not prod you, they hold you. Then verse 12, delivered with a wry exhaustion that anyone who has ever studied anything will recognize. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. There is always more to read. You will never finish. At some point, you have to stop gathering information and start living according to what you already know. And then, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Two clauses, and between them the entire book resolves. Fear God. We have met this phrase repeatedly, and now it arrives as the final word. And by now you should understand it correctly. It is not terror. It is the response of a vapor creature standing before the one whose work endures forever. Nothing added, nothing taken away. It is knowing the scale. It is the collapse of pretension. It is what happens to a person who has genuinely accepted that they are small and brief and not in charge, and who then discovers that the one who is in charge is good. And notice what fearing God does to everything else in this book. If God is properly feared, the silver loses its power over you, because you know what it is and what it is not. The comparison with your neighbor loses its grip, because you are not performing for that audience. The need to be remembered dissolves, because you are known by the one whose memory does not fail. The demand that life make sense relaxes, because you have stopped requiring an explanation from someone you have decided to trust. Keep his commandments. And this is where Ecclesiastes lands its final blow against a certain kind of paralysis. After 12 chapters of not knowing the works of God, not knowing what will come, not knowing whether this or that shall prosper, here is something you can actually do this afternoon without any additional information. You do not know the future. You do know what he has said. Do that, for this is the whole duty of man. The Hebrew is even more compact and more striking, for this is the whole of man, not merely his duty, his wholeness. This is what a complete human being consists of. Everything that was fragmented, scattered, and chasing across 11 chapters is gathered up here into one integrated life. And then the final verse, which throws the door open, for God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. Every secret thing. That cuts both ways, and both ways are necessary. It means the hidden wrong will not stay hidden. The thing nobody knows about, the thing that has never had a consequence, the private compromise that has gone unpunished for 15 years, it is not gone. There is a time there, as chapter 3 said, sentence not executed speedily is not sentence cancelled, and this is the half people rarely hear. It means the hidden good will not stay hidden either. The kindness nobody saw. The forgiveness nobody knew you extended. The years you cared for someone with no one watching. The prayer you prayed for a person who never found out. The bread you cast on the waters that never visibly came back. Every secret thing, including that. Under the sun, nothing carries over. Above the sun, nothing is lost. That is the resolution of the question asked in chapter 1, verse 3. What profit hath a man? And it took 12 chapters to earn it. Teaching. 28. A greater than Solomon, where Ecclesiastes was always pointing. We should not close this book without asking the question it leaves hanging in the air. Ecclesiastes ends with an instruction: fear God and keep his commandments. It is the right conclusion, and it is a genuinely solid place to stand. But if you have been listening carefully for the last 3 hours, you will have noticed that the book has also demonstrated at length that you cannot do this perfectly. God made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. There is not a just man upon earth that doeth good, and sinneth not. That is Ecclesiastes 7:20 in this very book. The man telling you to keep the commandments has already told you that nobody does. So the book closes with a door that it cannot open by itself. And that is not a flaw. That is what the Old Testament does everywhere. It states the requirement with perfect clarity and leaves you looking for someone who can meet it. Now consider a scene about 1,000 years after this book was written. A crowd is pressing around a teacher in Galilee, and some of them are demanding a sign. And he says to them, "The queen of the south shall rise up in the judgment with this generation, and shall condemn it. For she came from the uttermost parts of the earth to hear the wisdom of Solomon. And behold, a greater than Solomon is here." A greater than Solomon. Solomon had wisdom. Jesus is called the wisdom of God. Solomon built a temple that was destroyed. Jesus said, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." And he was speaking of his body. Solomon was a son of David who reigned in Jerusalem. Jesus is the son of David, whose kingdom has no end. Solomon looked at all his works and found no profit under the sun. Jesus looked at his finished work from a cross and said, "It is accomplished." And watch how directly the gospel answers this book, line by line. Ecclesiastes says, "All is vapor, you cannot keep anything." Jesus says, "Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal." There is a place where things do not evaporate. Ecclesiastes says, "The tears of the oppressed had no comforter." Jesus says, "I will pray the Father, and he shall give you another comforter, that he may abide with you forever." Ecclesiastes says, "There is no remembrance of former things, you will be forgotten." Jesus says, "The very hairs of your head are all numbered." And to a dying criminal who had nothing to leave behind, "Today shalt thou be with me in paradise." Ecclesiastes says, "One event happeneth to the wise and the fool. All go to one place, the dust returns to the earth." Jesus says, "I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live." Ecclesiastes says, "He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver." Jesus says, "Whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst." Ecclesiastes says, "The heart of the sons of men is full of evil, and God made man upright, but they sought out many inventions." Jesus says, "A new heart also will I give you." And he goes to a cross to make it possible. Ecclesiastes says, "God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing." Jesus says, "There is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus." And the great enemy of this book, the vapor, the brevity, the fact that everything and everyone dissolves, is precisely what Jesus walked into. He entered the hevel. He took a body that could tire and bleed and stop. He experienced the full weight of a life under the sun, including the injustice that Koheleth wept over. An innocent man destroyed while the powerful looked on, and no comforter came. He went all the way down into the dust that the poem in chapter 12 describes. And then, on the 3rd day, something happened that Ecclesiastes could not see from where it stood. The dust did not stay dust. The one event that happens to the wise and the fool alike happened to him, and did not hold. That is why the New Testament can say the sentence that Ecclesiastes could never say. Paul writes at the end of his great chapter on resurrection, "Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, forasmuch as ye know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord." Not in vain, not hevel, not vapor. Hear the argument in that verse, because it is Ecclesiastes 2:11 answered directly. Solomon looked at all his labor and said, "No profit." Paul looks at the labor of ordinary believers and says, "Not in vain," and he gives the reason. Not because work is inherently permanent, it is not, only because of the resurrection, because there is now a place where things are kept. Everything Ecclesiastes says about life under the sun remains true. Your years are still short. Your work is still handed to someone else, your name is still forgotten within a few generations, and the crooked things in your life still will not straighten. Ecclesiastes was never wrong. It was only ever incomplete, and it knew it. It set eternity in front of you and admitted it could not show you the whole. It told you to fear God and could not tell you how to be at peace with Him. It pointed at a door it could not open. The door has been opened. Teaching 29. A letter to the one who fears their life has meant nothing before we close. I want to speak directly to one person, and if it is not you, hold it for someone it is. You have listened to this whole study, and underneath everything you have heard, there has been a sentence sitting in your chest that you have never said out loud to anyone. It goes something like this: I think my life may not have amounted to anything. Maybe you are in your 50s or 60s, and the shape of your life is now mostly fixed, and it is not the shape you thought it would be. Maybe you had a plan and the plan did not happen, and what happened instead was smaller and harder and less remarkable. And you have been quietly grieving a version of yourself that never got to exist. Maybe you have watched people you started out alongside go much further, and you have told yourself repeatedly that you are not the comparing type, and you compare anyway, at night, when there is nothing to distract you. Or maybe you are younger, and the fear has a different shape, not that your life has meant nothing, but that it is going to mean nothing, and you can already feel the years starting to move faster than you expected. I want to say several things to you, and every one of them comes out of the book we have just walked through. The first is that this fear is not a sign of ingratitude or weak faith. It is the direct and predictable result of having eternity set in your heart while living inside a vapor. You were built to want permanence in a world that does not supply it. The ache is not a defect in your soul. It is the correct reading of an instrument that is working perfectly. The second is that the standard by which you are judging your life is the wrong standard, and Ecclesiastes has spent 12 chapters proving it. You are measuring by yithron, surplus, remainder, what is left over, what carries forward, what other people will be able to see. And there is no yithron under the sun for anybody. Not for you, and not for the people whose lives look larger than yours. They will be forgotten just as thoroughly, in just as few generations. The measure you are using returns 0 for every life ever lived, including the celebrated ones. It is not telling you something about your life. It is telling you something about the measure. The third is that the things you have dismissed as too small to count are, according to this book, the actual substance of a life. Eat your bread with joy. Live joyfully with the one you love. Do what your hand finds to do with all your might. Give a portion to 7 and also to 8. Lift up the one who fell. 2 are better than 1. Every single one of those is small and daily and invisible, and Scripture puts them forward as the wise life. The years you spent raising a child nobody wrote about, the job you did faithfully that no one praised, the relative you cared for during the long decline, the friend you kept showing up for. You have been counting those as the filler between the meaningful parts. They were the meaningful parts. The fourth is that you cannot see the pattern, and you were told in advance that you would not be able to. He hath made everything beautiful in his time, but no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. Your inability to see the shape of your life is not evidence that it has no shape. It is exactly what chapter 3 told you to expect. You are inside the weaving, looking at the back of it, and the back of a tapestry always looks like a mess of loose threads and knots. The fifth is that God requireth that which is past. Whatever you think you wasted is not out of his reach. Whatever quiet good you did that vanished without a trace was not lost. He seeks out that which has been driven away, and every secret thing will be brought into judgment, which means the hidden faithfulness of your obscure life will be brought into the light along with everything else. And the last thing is the simplest. Your life does not have to mean something in order to be loved. You have had the order backwards, and almost everyone does. You have believed that if you could accumulate enough significance, you would then be worth something. The gospel reverses it entirely. You were loved first, at enormous cost, before you had produced anything, and the significance is not something you generate, but something conferred on you by the one who did the loving. So set it down. The audit you have been running on your own existence, set it down. You will never make it balance, and it was never yours to balance. Fear God, keep his commandments, eat your bread, do the work in front of you with all your might, love the people you have been given, and let the accounting belong to the one who keeps records that do not burn. Closing reflection, the clarity you came for. We have walked the whole road together, from the first breath of vanities to the last line about every secret thing brought into judgment. 3 hours ago you sat down with a book that has a reputation for being the bleakest thing in the Bible. Let us name honestly what it actually gave you. It gave you permission to stop pretending. That alone is worth the hours. You are allowed to say that the world is not fair, that good people are destroyed and bad people prosper, that you cannot see what God is doing, that some things in your life are crooked and will not straighten. Ecclesiastes said all of it first, and God put it in the book. It gave you the diagnosis for your restlessness. Eternity in the heart of a temporary creature. That is why nothing has ever been enough. Not because you are ungrateful, because you were built for something this world does not contain. It gave you the shape of a season, both halves of every pair appointed under heaven, so that the dark stretch you are in is not a detour from the life you were supposed to have. It is part of the poem. It gave you the arithmetic of enough. Better a handful with quietness. The sleep of the laboring man is sweet. Check 3 in the morning, not the balance. It gave you your portion, this specific allotment of days, handed to you, not chosen by you, and worth planting something in. It gave you the freedom to work without needing the work to save you. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. The fiercest instruction in the book, spoken by the man most certain that none of it lasts. It gave you the courage to sow while the wind is still blowing, because the farmer watching the sky never gets a harvest. And it gave you a place to stand at the end of everything you cannot control. Fear God and keep his commandments, the one thing available to you today without any additional information about the future. That is clarity. Not the clarity of having your questions answered, because most of them will not be answered on this side. The clarity of finally knowing which questions were never going to be answered, which burdens were never yours, which measure was always going to return 0, and where to put your weight instead. The dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns unto God who gave it. You are held on both ends of that sentence by the same hands. Now, one last thing before you go. If someone came to mind while you were listening, and I suspect someone did, I want to ask you to send this to them. Not to everyone, to one person. Think of who it was. Maybe it is the friend who has been building and cannot rest, who is exhausted in a way they will not admit to anyone. Maybe it is the one who lost someone this year and is still standing in the house of mourning with no comforter. Maybe it is the person who told you they are not sure any of it matters and you did not know what to say back. Maybe it is the one who is quietly convinced their life has amounted to nothing and who would never say that sentence out loud to a living soul. Send it to them. You do not need to write anything clever. Just, I listened to this today and thought of you. That is enough. 3 hours in this book has a way of finding people who did not know they were looking for it, and you may be the only person in the world positioned to put it in front of them. Casting bread upon the waters is exactly what that is. You will probably never see what it does. Send it anyway. And if you have not subscribed yet, do that too. It is free, it is one tap, and it keeps your seat here for what comes next. Then, before you close this, leave a comment and tell us which line or which verse from these 3 hours you most needed to hear. Not the one you think was most profound, the one that landed somewhere real, the one that made you stop and go back a few seconds. Write it down. Someone scrolling past your comment tonight is going to need that exact line, and they are going to find it because you left it there. And now, a blessing over you as you go. May the God who made everything beautiful in its time do that with the part of your life that currently looks like nothing but loose threads and knots. May the eternity He set in your heart stop tormenting you and start guiding you, pointing past every good thing that could not hold your weight. To the one who can, may you receive your portion this week without resentment. This body, these years, this work, these people, this ordinary bread, and may you actually taste it. May you sleep the sweet sleep of the laboring man, and may nothing you own be permitted to keep you awake. May you find your second, the one who lifts you when you fall, who gives you heat in a cold season, who stands with you when one would be overcome. May you do whatever your hand finds to do with all your might, free at last from needing it to justify your existence. And when the keepers of the house begin to tremble, and the almond tree flourishes, and the daughters of music are brought low, may you be found without fear, because you remembered your Creator, and because the Spirit He gave is going home to the one who gave it. The light is sweet. Go and behold the sun. God bless you, wherever in the world you are listening from. We will see you in the next teaching. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, all is vanity. Ecclesiastes 1:2. He hath made everything beautiful in his time, also he hath set the world in their heart. Ecclesiastes 3:11. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Ecclesiastes 12:13.